Chapter 364. Great Chaotic True Force. What about the otherworld deity-ranked secret techniques? Are there any that I can cultivate? Dongbua Shuang asked. Although his two senior brothers believed that this secret technique was more suitable for him, he still had to compare them. Your three true meanings have yet to reach the deity heart realm. Apart from the time immemorial scripture, which you can use as a nothingness body, the otherworld deity-ranked secret techniques will be difficult for you. Among them, there are two battle aura-related secret techniques that are relatively easy for you, but there is still hope for you to learn them. One of them is the Profound Handle Star Force, which focuses on defense and has decent strength. As for the Great Chaotic True Force, it focuses on extreme strength. The thick-robed youth explained, and in this war, you have the time immemorial body, which is more than enough to protect you. What you need is even greater strength, which is why seventh brother and I believe that the Great Chaotic True Force is more suitable for you. Dongbua Shuang nodded and couldn't help but ask, Senior brother Goodbye, you said that the Great Chaotic True Force is somewhat difficult for me. It shouldn't be too difficult, right? If you had reached the Star Deity Heart Realm, you would have been able to learn it easily. But now that you have created your own true meaning of Star Secret Technique, you should be able to succeed if you put in a little more effort, Goodbye said. It's hard to say how long it will take you to learn it. If you comprehend it deeply enough, you should be able to learn it quickly. But if you get stuck, you won't be able to learn it even when the war breaks out. Dongbua Shuang felt the pressure. He had to learn it. How should I choose the treasure? Dongbua Shuang asked, how can I win? The scarlet-cloaked youth said, Junior brother, don't worry. You still have enough time. Second brother and I will think about it carefully and prepare the best plan for you. Senior Shiwei and Senior Crimson Rock had high standards, but they mainly followed Sacred Master Crimson Rock. Their two senior brothers, on the other hand, had roamed the deity world and experienced many dangers, so they had more combat experience. Dongbua Shuang nodded. With your two senior brothers helping you, you don't have to worry. Let's go and accept the Great Chaotic True Force inheritance. By the way, you don't plan on cultivating any other world deity-ranked secret techniques, right? Senior Crimson Rock asked. It's the Great Chaotic True Force. Dongbua Shuang nodded. He also felt that what his two senior brothers said made sense. If the enemy's strength was suppressed, then he should do everything he could to increase his strength. The stronger, the better. When the gap was large enough, no matter how profound one's laws of profound mysteries were, it would be useless. This was the so-called breaking through with force. In a hidden cave. Shwa. Dongbua Shuang was teleported into this cavern. There was nothing else in this cavern except for a droplet of water that was suspended in midair. That droplet of water was dark and gloomy, as if it was swallowing all light. Upon closer inspection, one could feel that within the darkness of that droplet of water, there was a heaven-destroying and earth-shattering law of profound mysteries. Dongbua Shuang couldn't help but hold his breath. Dongbua Shuang, accept the inheritance. Crimson Rock's voice echoed within the cavern. Show. That floating droplet of water immediately shot out a ray of black light that entered between Dongbua Shuang's eyebrows. A large amount of information immediately entered his mind. I, Dongbua Shuang, swear under the witness of His Majesty Blood Blade. Dongbua Shuang couldn't help but swear the oath. Translucent words of the oath floated within the cavern. This was the key to the inheritance. If one didn't swear the oath, they wouldn't be able to obtain more information within the inheritance. Thus, in the deity world and dark abyss, even if some powerful existences learned a world deity rank secret technique, they wouldn't be able to leak it. This was because if they did, they would be violating the oath and would be killed by His Majesty Blood Blade. After swearing the oath, Dongbua Shuang's sea of consciousness immediately converged into a droplet of water. This droplet of water contained countless flowing runes that were profound and hard to comprehend. There was too much information, and his soul was too weak to receive all of it. He could only condense it into a droplet of water and gradually transmit the information according to what he could accept. What a powerful great chaotic true force! Dongbua Shuang exclaimed. The Great Chaotic True Force was divided into 6 levels. It was a complicated transformation of the most basic energy, such as battle chi and divine power, into a more powerful and unique energy. It was like turning mud into bricks. It was like turning stone into gold. Under the guidance of the world deity rank secret technique Great Chaotic True Force created by the almighty existences of the deity world, its efficiency would be even higher. Even if the almighty existences of the deity world created it and followed it, the requirements for one's realm would still be extremely high. The first level was already extremely difficult. If one could master all 6 levels and reach the realm of large success, the power would be. One had to know that the Great Chaotic True Force was formed from countless droplets of water. And once it reached large success, every droplet of true force would contain a chaotic whole. What was a chaotic whole? A chaotic whole was the end of a world's collapse and destruction. In terms of weight, a chaotic whole was no less than an entire mortal world. And this was just the power of a single droplet of true force. Countless droplets formed the vigorous Great Chaotic True Force. If one truly mastered it, the power would be unimaginable. Just a single ripple would be enough to turn an entire planet into dust. A single breath of air would be enough to kill countless deities. What it pursued was the pinnacle of power and might. Oh! Truly amazing! Countless runes appeared in Dongbu Shui Ying's Sea of Consciousness. Hundreds of millions of runes seemed to form a single entity, layer upon layer. The runes were intricately linked, and in the end, they formed a single entity. It was extremely mysterious. Compared to this, the secret technique I created is indeed much simpler. Dongbu Shuang felt rather excited. There was still a difference between secret techniques and secret techniques. This secret technique was a fixed set of runes, while his secret technique was formed by many different combinations. However, after seeing the first layer of runes, which were incomparably complex and contained the profound mysteries of the star deity heart, Dongbu Shuang had many ideas about his secret technique. In the past, he thought that it was already very complete, but now he felt that it was still too simple and could still be improved. Time passed day by day. In his own cultivation grotto heaven, Dongbu Shuang and Jing Qiu were both studying and cultivating. The time in the cultivation grotto heaven was 100 times faster than normal. Oh! Jing Qiu had been studying Senior Snow, the divine weapon that protected her clan. Senior Snow was a top-grade divine-ranked blood-refined divine weapon. The divine spear that Dongbu Shuang was going to obtain in the future was only at this level. Jing Qiu naturally studied it carefully so that she could unleash even more power from Senior Snow. Dongbu Shuang, on the other hand, was reflecting the first layer of the Great Chaotic True Force with his secret technique. He discovered that this way, the efficiency of studying the first layer of the Great Chaotic True Force was much higher, and the power of his secret technique was also increasing. He even changed the name of his Star True Intent secret technique from the Star Rotation to the Chaotic Suppression. He wanted to rely on this move to ruthlessly crush the Sorcerer God and the Great Demon God. However, he was still in the process of perfecting it. Dongbu, Dongbu. A voice came from the outside world. Dongbu Shuang opened his eyes. What happened? Jing Qiu also stopped cultivating. It's Senior Crimson Rock. Dongbu Shuang smiled. He actually came specifically to find me. This is very rare. If I'm not wrong, it should be that my blood-refined divine spear has been completed. Jing Qiu was overjoyed. Completed? Let's go take a look. This is only my guess. It might not be about the blood-refined divine spear. Dongbu Shuang led his wife out of the silent room and out of his own cultivation grotto heaven. At the entrance of the grotto heaven courtyard stood the gorgeously dressed Senior Crimson Rock. Dongbu, the blood-refined divine spear has been completed. Crimson Rock smiled and waved his hand. Come and take a look. A black spear appeared out of nowhere and floated in midair. The black spear's shaft was covered in countless black flames, and the spearhead was covered in a layer of golden light. An invisible power was released, and it was as if a vast star had stopped in midair, exuding a boundless oppressive might. The spearhead carried a terrifying sharpness that caused one's heart to palpitate. Inside the spear shaft and spearhead were countless veins. These veins were the divine pattern veins that Dongbui Shuang had poured his blood into. The moment Shuang saw it, he felt a soul resonance. Good. Dongbui Shuang couldn't help but shout out. The more he looked at it, the more he liked it. He couldn't help but reach out and grab it. The entire spear let out a low humming sound. I haven't opened my spirit sea yet, so I can't nurture it. However, I'll definitely treat you well in the future. Shuang held onto the spear as he softly muttered. The flames on the spear shaft and the golden light on the spear tip immediately retracted. Dongbui, this spear will accompany you for a long time in the future. Give it a name. Crimson Rock smiled and said. Chapter 365. Name of the spear? Dongbui Shuang muttered to himself for a moment, then a faint killing intent flashed in his eyes. Let's call it Blood Drinker Spear. Blood Drinker Spear? Senior Crimson Rock and Jing Qiu instantly understood. Blood Drinker was a very ordinary spear name. However, both of them could sense the killing intent in Dongbui Shuaying's words and understood what he was thinking. Dongbui, then I hope that you can use this Blood Drinker Spear to drink the blood of your enemies during the war, Crimson Rock said. Definitely. Dongbui Shuaying nodded. That's right, ordinary demigods who use divine weapons are usually low-grade divine weapons. But this Blood Drinker Spear of yours is a top-grade divine weapon. Although you can use it as a blood-refined divine weapon, it will still place a huge burden on your soul. Therefore, if you feel tired and have a splitting headache, you must not continue using it. You must rest and allow your soul to recover before continuing, Crimson Rock said. Haha, don't worry, I know. Dongbui Shuang laughed. Jing Qiu also has a blood-refined divine weapon. This has long been recorded by the Xia people. However, I estimate that with my powerful soul, even if I use it non-stop, I can probably use it for an hour. Yes. Crimson Rock nodded. More or less. Then there's no problem. Moreover, I don't need to use the Blood Drinker Spear in normal battles. Dongbui Shuang said, at the crucial moment, I can use the Great Chaotic True Force to increase the power of the Blood Drinker Spear, catching the enemy off guard. It's actually quite effective. Your soul is powerful and can be used for a long time. Jing Qiu, you must be careful. I'm afraid you'll need to rest after using it for a quarter of an hour. Crimson Rock looked at Jing Qiu. Understood. Jing Qiu smiled. Time passed, day by day. Dongbui Shuang grasped every day. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to master the Great Chaotic True Force before the war broke out. Every day, he spent more than half of his time in the silent room, keeping time 100 times faster. Compared to him, Jing Qiu spent even more time in the silent room. As a mage, her main goal was to research magical techniques. The runes on Senior Snow were too complicated, and the more she understood, the more excited she became. The 13th year on Red Dust Island. One day, on a large tree, the leaves were green and full of vitality. Under the tree, Dongbui Shuang was sitting cross-legged. He had just finished practicing his spear technique, and he immediately sat down to cultivate the Great Chaotic True Force. Buzz! Within his Dantian Sea of Qi, his fiery red transcendent warrior energy, which had reached the limit of a demigod, surged like countless flames and spread everywhere. Suddenly, above the vast Qi Sea, countless runes began to converge, as if forming a mystical building. These countless runes actually perfectly formed a water droplet. This water droplet was incomparably beautiful and had a natural rhythm. Just by looking at it, one would think it was a work of art. As soon as it was formed, the surrounding fiery red battle energy continuously poured in. A large amount of battle energy gathered into a dark red water droplet. Then, a second drop, a third drop. The transcendent warrior energy within Dongbui Shuaying's body had only condensed into 16 droplets, and the battle energy within his Dantian Sea of Qi had already dried up. 16 dark red water droplets seemed like a small number. But in reality, they possessed a frightening amount of power. At this time, the energy of heaven and earth from the outside world surged wildly into Dongbu Shui Ying's body, transforming it into battle energy within his Dantian Sea of Qi. This battle energy was then transformed by Dongbu Shui Ying into the most basic level, the Great Chaotic True Force. The energy of heaven and earth within Red Dust Island was extremely dense. Absorbing energy from the outside world here was almost equivalent to absorbing origin stones in the Xia people's world. His body continuously absorbed the energy, and the number of dark red water droplets increased. Hua hua hua, the water droplets converged into a stream, and a dark red stream of water began to flow within his body. So comfortable. His entire body felt comfortable. As the true force flowed, his body and soul felt comfortable. It actually had the effect of nourishing the soul and strengthening the body. However, compared to the time immemorial scripture, which specialized in cultivating the body, this effect was negligible. Dongbu Shuang, who was sitting cross-legged under a tree, was surrounded by a whirlpool. A large amount of energy surged and continuously entered his body. After a full 6 hours, his Dantian Sea of Qi felt full and could no longer contain any more energy. A dark red lake appeared within his Dantian Sea of Qi, and countless streams of water danced in the air. Let's see how this power feels. It's said that it's an extreme power. Dongbu Shuang controlled the great chaotic true force and covered his entire body. The surging dark red energy immediately spread to every part of his body. He casually waved his palm and chopped forward. Rip! A palm blade formed from compressed air instantly slashed across the sky, leaving behind a black spatial tear. A look of delight appeared on Dongbu Shuiying's face. He immediately jabbed with his finger, punched with his fist, and slapped with his palm. When he was happy, he even took out the blood drinker spear and began to display it. The black blood drinker spear caused the surrounding space to tremble. The power of each attack was incomparably strong. Fortunately, the space on Crimson Dust Island was relatively stable. Such powerful strength. A casual attack has the power of a late-stage deity. If I use the blood drinker spear together with my secret skill, I should be able to match a peak deity in terms of power. Dongbu Shuang revealed a look of delight. The pursuit of extreme power. The great chaotic true force together with the blood drinker spear and his secret skill allowed his power to reach a higher level. Although the sorcerer god and the great demon god are of a higher level than me, my power is much stronger than their god avatars. However, the most difficult thing to deal with is their war weapons, Dongbu Shuang thought to himself. If it was just a god avatar, the threat would not be so great. More importantly, the sorcerer god would likely establish a stable spatial tunnel. When that time came, the army would swarm in. The great demon god's avatar and the sorcerer god's avatar would likely personally control the war weapons to fight him. You succeeded? The two senior brothers were overjoyed. The thick-robed youth, Gubai, smiled and said, "Since you've already cultivated it, you can follow this plan. Old Seven and I have discussed it in detail. You can choose any one of the requirements on the list. How about this, choose this blueprint and give it to me. I can personally refine a war fortress worth more than 2 million deity crystals for you, and I'll give you another 1,000,000 deity crystals to exchange for other treasures." A war fortress and 1,000,000 deity crystals? Dongbu Shuang could not help but feel excited. "Thank you, second senior brother. There's no need to thank me. This blueprint is nothing to you, but it's very precious to me. Help me obtain it while you can choose any request." "It's a win-win situation," the thick-robed youth said. "I'll hand over that war fortress to you in 3 days. I can give you 1,000,000 deity crystals right now." Dongbu Shuang was very moved. Blueprint? He did not even understand it. If he were asked to exchange it, he would at most exchange for 1,000,000 deity crystals. Now, he was asking for 1,000,000 deity crystals and a war fortress personally refined by his second senior brother that was worth more than 2 million deity crystals. "Take a look. This is the plan we've come up with." The scarlet-cloaked youth beside him flipped his hand and took out a scroll. He unfurled the scroll, which was filled with densely packed words. It was a detailed war plan. Amazing! Dongbo Shui Ying's eyes lit up the moment he saw it. Chapter 366. Dongbo Shuang looked at the detailed battle plan and could not help but nod. His two senior apprentice brothers had made ample preparations for attack, defense, and retreat. Although you have made ample preparations, the Great Demon God is a Stage 2 Great Demon God. The Sorcerer God is also a material plane lord. Their wealth is probably not any less than ours. The thick-robed youth, Gubai, continued, furthermore, they can choose whatever weapons they want in the deity world. I dare not say that you will definitely win this war. I only say that there is a chance of victory. I understand. Dongbo Shuang nodded. If we can destroy the spatial tunnel, that would be for the best. If we fail, we will immediately retreat to the infernal world. With our arrangements, the infernal world will definitely be incomparably stable. They will not be able to break through. You Xia people can continue living in the infernal world. As for you, return to Crimson Rock Mountain to cultivate. Try your best to reach the peak of the deity realm within 10,000 years and refine the realm core. If you fail to refine it, you will either stay in Crimson Rock Mountain forever or go to the deity world. You will never be able to return to the Xia people's world. The Xia people's world is already very lucky to have given birth to a genius like you. Furthermore, they will live in the infernal world in the future. It is likely that they will never be able to give birth to another genius. They might not even have the chance to become a deity, because they will be trapped in the infernal world forever. Dongbo Shuang nodded. He understood. If they were defeated, they could only defend. Their only chance at survival was to refine the realm core. Refining the realm core within 10,000 years is very difficult. The scarlet-cloaked youth, He Fei Yun, said, one's realm must be extremely high, at the peak of the deity realm, or even close to the world deity level, only then can one have a chance of refining the realm core. Thus, material plane lords are extremely rare. Although your talent is not bad, it is hard to say whether you will be able to refine the realm core within 10,000 years. I understand. Thus, it is best if we can win this war and destroy the spatial tunnel. Dongbo Shuang smiled faintly. He could not help but say, I've already grasped the basics of the great chaotic true force. Even if I continue to cultivate, it will be very difficult for me to improve much. Why wait for the great demon god to start the war? I can take the initiative to attack now. Break through the ocean of trees world and destroy that fortress, Dongbo Shuang said. Two senior brothers, I wonder if this idea of mine will work. Within the fortress of the oceanic forest world. It was probably the avatars of the sorcerer god and the great demon god. It was likely that they also had some facilities for temporary spatial passages. As long as it was destroyed. That would be a victory. Don't even think about it. The thick-robed youth shook his head. As long as we reinforce the infernal world, they won't be able to break through. By the same logic, you won't be able to break through that world of trees either. The scarlet-caped youth, He Fei Yun, explained, that's because the entire forest ocean world has definitely been completely refined by the spatial artifact as well. It's like it's one with the castle. Furthermore, the oceanic forest world is a vassal of the Xia people's world. If you attack the oceanic forest world, the deity artifact will disperse and weaken the might of the attack, or even disperse it to the rest of the Xia people's world. Unless you can directly destroy the deity artifact or destroy a mortal world, you won't be able to do anything to the fortress. AI. Dongbo Shuang shook his head. He knew it wouldn't be so simple. Then can the Xia people nurture a deity avatar and invite you two world deity senior brothers to descend and help us in the war? Dongbo Shuang could not help but ask. If we could descend, we would be very willing. After all, we've been cooped up here for far too long. The thick-robed youth shook his head. However, to nurture a deity avatar suitable for me, I would need to slowly nurture it in the Xia people's world. It must be a fleshly body of a native of the Xia people. Only then would I be able to descend. No matter how fast the nurturing process is, it would still take at least 100 years. I don't think there's enough time. Dongbua Shuang shook his head. Attack the oceanic forest world? No hope. Their own side could create a deity avatar. It would be too late. I've heard that there's an avatar technique. Dongbua Shuang asked. But I've been on Crimson Dust Island for so long, and I've even become an inner disciple, yet I've never discovered that there's an avatar technique. Avatar techniques were something that the temporal temple had told him. There is. The thick-robed youth nodded. Can I cultivate it? That way, I'll have both a true body and an avatar in battle. That way, my side's combat power will also increase, Dongbua Shuang hurriedly asked. Teacher has long since set down a rule that any disciple of my Crimson Rock Mountain who has yet to comprehend a grade 1 true meaning or become a world deity is forbidden from cultivating avatar techniques, the thick-robed youth said. Ah! Dongbua Shuang was startled. Why? Because an avatar technique requires you to split your soul into two, the scarlet-cloaked youth explained. The origin of one's soul is incomparably important. Even the slightest loss of one's origin would be unbearable. As for an avatar technique, it would result in the loss of half of one's origin. This would cause your comprehension ability and innate talent to drop. You can clearly feel that your cultivation speed will not be as fast as before. Your talent is high enough, and you have a high chance of refining the realm core within 10,000 years. However, the moment your soul is split into two, your combat power will increase, but your cultivation speed will be greatly reduced. The possibility of refining the realm core will also be greatly reduced. Dongbua Shuang felt helpless. He had thought of a way to increase his side's chances of victory, but none of them worked. It was no wonder that his two senior apprentice brothers had never mentioned it before. In the following years, Dongbua Shuang continued his cultivation on Crimson Dust Island, working hard to raise his realm in hopes of reaching the deity heart realm. At the same time, he was pondering over his secret skill. As for his wife, Jing, her avatar would come to Crimson Rock Mountain once a year to replenish her magic energy. When she returned, she would bring back a large number of treasures to stabilize the infernal world. She wanted to stabilize the infernal world so that the sorcerer god and the great demon god would not be able to break through it. After all, if they were defeated in the future, the Xia people would have to defend the infernal world. Year after year passed. Dongbua Shuang had already been on Crimson Dust Island for 15 years. On Crimson Dust Island, Dongbua Shuang and his wife, Jing, were sending off the Maishan Master and Persei. The 20 years are about to end. The sorcerer god and the great demon god might start a war at any time. It's about time for us to leave. Persei looked at Dongbua Shuang. I have nothing to worry about anymore. Dongbua, the Xia people's crisis is about to arrive. You have to be careful. If you really can't do it, you have to protect your own life. You might even choose to ascend to the deity world. When you become an almighty expert of the deity world, even if you die, you will be able to revive from the river of time. Therefore, no matter what happens, you must not give up. You have to stay alive. I understand. Thank you. Dongbua Shuang smiled. Rest assured. The Xia people will definitely emerge victorious in the end. Oh, right. My Flying Sword Villa is located in the territory governed by the Bloodshed God Palace. It's under the jurisdiction of the Heavenly Star Mansion. It's located on the Scarlet God planet of the Harmonious Water Starfield. If you have the chance in the future, you can come and find me. Persei smiled. Definitely. Dongbua Shuang nodded. I've heard that in the deity world, the Bloodshed God Palace, the Myriad God Palace, and the Temporal Island are the three most powerful forces. I reckon that I'll have the chance to enter the territory of the Bloodshed God Palace. The Maishan Master smiled. Dongbua Shuang, we'll bid farewell here. I hope the Xia people will emerge victorious. However, no matter what, don't give up easily. As long as you're alive, you'll have a chance. The two of you, can't you say anything nice? Rest assured, the Xia people will definitely emerge victorious. Dongbua Shuang laughed. Sister-in-law, take good care of Dongbua. We'll meet again in the deity world in the future, Persei said to Jing Qiu. Amen. Big brother Persei, don't worry, Jing Qiu said. Senior Crimson Rock, please send us off, the Meishan Master and Persei exchanged a glance before saying in unison. Ying. A ripple enveloped the two of them. Both of them smiled as they looked at Dongbua Shuang and his wife. Shua. The two of them disappeared. Dongbua Shuang looked at them as they left. It had been close to 20 years since Persei and the rest descended. The sorcerer god and the great demon god were about to start a war soon. Perhaps, it might start within 3 to 5 months. Snow Eagle, don't worry. The infernal realm is much more stable than before. No matter what, defending the infernal realm won't be a problem for you. You've already contributed greatly to the Xia people. Jing Qiu could feel Dongbua Shuang's thoughts as she consoled him. Dongbua Shuang looked at his wife and smiled. In his heart, he was filled with anticipation. Hopefully, I'll be able to reach the deity heart realm and the strength of the blood-creeping flower will grow stronger. If that's the case, the Xia people will have a higher chance of victory. The longer the war dragged on, the more advantageous it would be for his side. However, the sorcerer god and the great demon god were also afraid that things might change if they delayed. The moment they were ready, they would immediately start the war. Chapter 367. In the blink of an eye, it had been 23 years since Dongbua Shuang entered Crimson Rock Mountain. The entire Xia people's world was filled with turbulent undercurrents. The Xia people were on high alert, because war could break out any day. Forest Ocean World. The hemispherical fortress stood there. The Xia people had guessed that the sorcerer god and the great demon god had hidden some of their tricks here, but they could do nothing about it. What do you think? Did that greedy Wahai family sign the oath? The phantom head of the great demon god asked. Sign the oath. The golden-robed sorcerer god gritted his teeth and said, this Wahai clan is really taking advantage of the situation. Not only did we give them the faith of this mortal world, they actually dared to ask for so many benefits. The eyes of the great demon god's illusory skull were faintly filled with flames. He said in a low voice, the Wahai family is one of the top families in the Wave Feather Empire. The temple of the earth god of the Xia people's world has always belonged to them, and their faith is also enjoyed by their family. Back then, when I fought with that old fellow from the Wahai family, I thought that he was just a stage 2 world deity and that I could beat him. Who would have thought that when our deity avatars fought, I would discover that he was already half a step into the stage 3 world deity realm. In that battle, I lost, and he won. Not long after, I heard that he became a stage 3 world deity. That old fellow is very cunning. At this crucial moment, how could he not offer a high price? In the deity world, other than the largest bloodshed god palace, the temporal island, and the myriad god palace, there were a few other deity world empires with relatively weaker foundations. The Terrene Shrine was backed by the deity realm's Wave Feather Empire. We've made ample preparations this time. Great demon god, you might not be able to defeat that old man, but you should be able to hold him off for a short period of time. As long as the spatial passageway is established, my army from the other mortal world will be able to kill their way in. At that time, even if he had 3 or 5 avatars, it would still be useless, let alone one. The golden-robed man sneered. I'm just afraid that at the most critical moment of building the tunnel, that old man's avatar will be able to travel through the space-time tunnel and arrive instantly. Who knows, he might destroy it. The great demon god said. Although he was confident that he could hold them off for a while. But confidence did not mean absolute. After all, one of them was in the distant dark abyss, while the other was in the divine world. It had been too long since they had last fought. Although the great demon god had made some progress, he was more confident. But his opponent was still a stage 3 world deity. Forget it. Giving him benefits is within the range of what we can tolerate. The golden-robed man said, the Wahai clan is also afraid that we will shed all pretense of cordiality. Their god doppelgangers are unable to successfully destroy it. In the end, they will not be able to obtain anything. Even the faith of the Xia people's world will be gone. Many benefits will only be given after the war. The great demon god's head continued, the temple of the earth god's Wahai clan has been dealt with. I wonder if there are any other god clones hiding in the Xia people's world. The last time I asked the temporal temple, I only knew that the temple of the earth god had a god avatar. The other powers didn't have one. The golden-robed man said, since the last time I asked, it hasn't been that fast to nurture a divine avatar's fleshly body. Let's hope that nothing unexpected happens. The great demon god's head said, as long as the other world deities don't interfere, this war will be very easy for us. As for the Xia people, a small Dongbush Shuang might be a little troublesome. However, his realm is still lower than ours. Once we establish the passageway, he will be able to sense it. By the time he rushes over, our army will have already passed through the passageway. Unless Dongbush Shuang becomes a god, there is nothing to worry about. The golden-robed man said indifferently, 23 years ago, he was only at the peak of stage 2. How could he become a god so quickly? Impossible. This fleshly body of mine needs another 2 years before it succeeds. Sorcerer god, shouldn't we get rid of the Xia people first? The great demon god's head said, after all, when the war breaks out, it will be more troublesome to act. They are currently within the Xia capital. The transcendence we have planted within the Xia people can also act. I have already prepared it. The golden-robed man said indifferently, I have obtained many ingredients from the temporal temple and painstakingly concocted a hexing poison. It has long been brought into the Xia capital by the transcendence of my beast clan. As long as I give the order, the hexing poison will be released. The qi and magic power of the transcendence within the entire Xia capital will be infiltrated. They will no longer be able to use qi and magic power. As for the mortals, they will immediately die under the effects of this hexing poison. Without qi and magic power, they can still mobilize the might of the heaven and earth. However, they will not be able to activate the deity equipment. The Infernal Palace's spatial deity equipment will also not be able to activate it. It will be easy to break through. The golden-robed man was incomparably confident. Amazing. As expected of the sorcerer god. The great demon god smiled. Hexing poison. It was originally a very sinister type. Cultivators who specialized in hexing poison were feared by others. However, would the ancestors of the Xia people have thought of this? Would they have taken precautions? The great demon god asked. Don't worry. I am the lord of a material world. When it comes to scheming, how can I be inferior to a few deities? The sorcerer god sneered. I have never treated the Xia people as my opponents. I can settle them in 2 or 3 moves. Only that Dongbush Shuang might be a little troublesome. However, it is just a little troublesome. You just have to watch the show. Alright, watch the show. The head of the great demon god revealed a smile. Infernal world, Xia capital. The population of the Xia capital was extremely high. Even the Scarlet Cloud Mountain world and other spaces had many Xia people. As for the transcendents, most of them lived within the Infernal Palace. An extremely small number of transcendents were scattered within their own residences. In a quiet room within a courtyard of the Infernal Palace, an ordinary Sky Realm transcendent mage was conducting an experiment. There was a pile of bottles and jars. This transcendent mage continued to experiment. Suddenly, he casually took out a seemingly ordinary black bottle from the pile of bottles and jars. He uncorked the bottle and began to pour the contents into the crystal jade plate in front of him. Some green liquid poured out of the black bottle, and a soundless and odorless aura began to spread. As soon as the aura entered the extraordinary mage's body, it seeped into her magical power spring. Instantly, her magical power was affected, and she could no longer use it. However, the transcendent mage remained calm and unmoved. He knew very well, this was voodoo. It was the great sorcerer god who had asked him to bring him in. He was a transcendent mage who was originally a magical beast. However, Great Elder Ao Lan had created his human body and allowed him to infiltrate the Xia people. He had even cultivated to become a transcendent. Naturally, he lived as an ordinary Sky Realm transcendent mage. This time, a large number of transcendents had gathered in the Xia capital. Naturally, he heard the order and came to the Xia capital to live in the Infernal Palace. A soundless and odorless aura was released, quickly exiting the room and spreading outwards. Once a transcendent was poisoned by this voodoo poison, they would not be able to use their battle energy or magic power. Transcendent bodies could still withstand it, but mortals would definitely die. The transcendent mage continued to mix, but the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He looked forward to it, looking forward to the extinction of the human race. The Beast Clan conquering the entire Xia people's world. He had infiltrated the Xia people's world for a long time, waiting for this day. Chapter 368. The space around the courtyard suddenly froze. The gas that was about to disperse out of the meditation room also froze, no longer able to move. The expression of the transcendent mage in the meditation room changed. He felt the change in the surrounding space. Holding the black bottle in his hand, he pushed open the stone door of the meditation room and rushed out. So. In the distance, several figures broke through the air and flew over. Leading them was the doppelganger of Palace Lord Chen. Stop! Palace Lord Chen roared. The transcendent mage who had just rushed out of the meditation room had a sinister expression. He fiercely threw the black bottle in his hand, but the moment he threw it, it froze in midair. Bang! A huge palm descended from the sky, directly smashing onto the transcendent mage's body. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Mage Jiang Shui, I didn't expect you to be a traitor. Palace Lord Chen and the other four figures stopped in midair. Palace Lord Chen coldly stared at the transcendent mage. Do you think this voodoo poison can harm our Xia people? Traitor? I'm not a traitor. The transcendent mage crawled up from the ground with a sinister expression. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, he growled, I was originally from the Beast Clan. You Xia people and I were born enemies. Killing you is what I should do. Working for you is betraying my clan. It's a pity I didn't succeed. Take him away. Palace Lord Chen ordered. Ha, you want to pry out some secrets from me? Dream on. The transcendent mage growled. His body suddenly warped and expanded, turning into a huge dark blue bird. The bird had sharp claws and glossy dark blue feathers. It let out a low cry, I'm a beast. How many years has it been since I dared to reveal my beast form? But now, I have nothing to fear, haha. Just as he finished speaking, pang, the dark blue bird suddenly exploded. Palace Lord Chen and the other four figures coldly looked down from midair. Beast Clan. They didn't say anything. There were two types of spies and traitors among the Xia people. One was from the demonic faction, and the other was from the Beast Clan. In any case, the members of the demonic faction were all humans. It was fine if the Beast Clan didn't make a move, but if they did, they would be ruthless. Within the oceanic forest world. I've said it before. The ancestors of the Xia people must have anticipated your voodoo methods. They must have been on guard. The head of the great demon god revealed a smile. As long as space is frozen, your voodoo poison will not be able to spread, and your techniques will be useless. However, they are really amazing. They were able to detect the voodoo poison as soon as it was spread. They were really prepared for it. On guard? The golden-robed sorcerer god sneered. I've said it before. When it comes to scheming, do you think I can't beat them? Other than the voodoo poison, I've also prepared a great gift for them. A great gift? The great demon god's head was surprised. A gift worth 100,000 divine gems. The golden-robed sorcerer god sneered. I obviously spent 1,000 divine gems to buy this thing, but the temporal temple charged me 100,000 divine gems to transport it. How ruthless. Originally, I didn't intend to use it, but since the voodoo poison is useless, I can only use the hard method. I don't believe that their infernal palace can suppress this treasure. This is much more expensive than their entire infernal palace. What treasure? The head of the great demon god asked. Flame god. The demon-destroying great flame god. The golden-robed sorcerer god sneered. The great demon god's head revealed a look of shock. Flame god, this was a weapon researched by the mages. It was indeed a terrifying weapon. Once it exploded, it would destroy both friend and foe alike. In the deity world, there were many cultivators who spent their entire lives researching Flame God, creating increasingly stronger and more bizarre versions of Flame God. After all, there were times when one's realm could not be increased. At such times, one could rely on external forces to increase one's deterrence. Voodoo, medicine, insects, weapons of war, and so on, these were all unorthodox Taoists. Just like in the deity world, there were existences who cultivated the Tao of insects that were comparable to the almighty existences of the deity world. However, because he was weak, he had lived for too long, and he had gone mad and ended up dead. The demon-destroying Great Flame God is comparable to the full-powered attack of a peak deity. The head of the great demon god exclaimed. Once it explodes within the Xia capital, even if the infernal palace's deity equipment can sense it, it will be helpless. Under its might, I'm afraid that most of the mortals and transcendents in the Xia capital will die. The voodoo poison is soft, but the flame god is hard. Let's see how they can block it. The golden-robed sorcerer god sneered. They should be satisfied with sending them to their deaths with 100,000 deity crystals. For the sake of victory, the sorcerer god was very willing. Within the Xia capital, in mid-air outside the infernal palace, a female transcendent was flying past. The number of beast clans that had infiltrated the Xia people could be counted on one's fingers, but she was one of them. Are we going to use it? This female transcendent was chosen to carry the flame god. She was also willing to use it. She was not afraid of death. Humans of the Xia people, die. Once you are exterminated, our beast clans will flourish. We will no longer have to hide and be hunted by you. The female transcendent waved her hand. Instantly, a silver ball appeared in midair. Following which, a terrifying power erupted, and the silver ball immediately turned dark red. Boom! An unimaginably terrifying power suddenly erupted. Countless red lights and lightning bolts abruptly spread out in all directions. The female transcendent who was hiding nearby was instantly annihilated. Although this peak deity's power was spread out in all directions, it was still terrifyingly strong. The surrounding space shattered, and the ground of the infernal palace's plaza began to disintegrate into nothingness. Some of the transcendents who were flying in the distance, as well as the citizens of the Xia capital, looked at the huge ball of light in midair. All of them revealed looks of fear. Ying! All of a sudden, a surging power appeared out of thin air, enveloping the huge ball of light from all directions. Although the ball of light was exploding, its power was actually suppressed to a radius of tens of meters. The power of a peak deity's attack was actually completely enveloped by this formless power. It seemed as though it was constantly being diverted. In less than a second, the formless power abruptly closed up, and the ball of light was finally destroyed. Deep within the infernal palace. In a secret space. The black-robed palace Lord Chen was currently controlling the situation. Discovered Flame God. Devil Destroyer Grade Flame God. Control successful. The power has been transferred to the Xia people's world. Transfer complete. The black-robed palace head Chen could not help but sigh in surprise when he heard the voice transmitted over by the treasure spirit. The current infernal palace was still the same as it was in the past, but in reality, the fowling guns had long since been replaced with cannons. All of this had been sent over by Shuang through Jing Qiu's hands. Ever since he became an honorary disciple, Shuang had sent over treasures to reinforce the infernal realm. After becoming an inner disciple, he discussed with his 2 senior brothers and spent another 200,000 deity crystals to buy treasures to reinforce the infernal realm once more. On Crimson Dust Island. Voodoo? Devil Destroyer Grade Flame God? Dongbua Shuang had also received the news. Yes. Jing Qiu revealed an anxious look. The sorcerer god and the others have started to act. The ones who did it are 2 spies from the beast race who infiltrated our Xia people. They haven't even started to stabilize the spatial passageway, and they're already attacking our Xia people. Dongbua Shuang frowned. He was not worried about the safety of the infernal realm at all. After the reinforcement, in the words of his 2 senior brothers, the infernal realm was already extremely stable. Even if the sorcerer god and the others used countless weapons to control the Xia people's world, they would not be able to break into the infernal realm. Regardless of whether it was soft or hard tactics. The infernal realm today was already extremely stable. They probably want to get rid of our Xia people first, Jing Qiu said. Dongbua Shuang said coldly, first the voodoo poison, then the devil destroyer grade flame god. They really think too highly of our Xia people. How shameful. I actually fell asleep in front of my computer when I was feeling sleepy. I only finished writing now. Star. Chapter 369. Snow Eagle, what should we do? Asked Jing Qiu anxiously. What else can we do? Dongbua Shuang shook his head. If there was a way, I would have done it long ago. They have already refined the oceanic forest world, and their operations are extremely stable. All I can do is prepare. The more preparations I make, the better. There is no other way. They have the initiative, and I can only wait. However, the longer we drag this out, the more advantageous it will be for us. Jing Qiu nodded. Although they had been tricked, first by the voodoo poison, then by the demon destroyer grade blazing lightning, they had wanted to destroy the Xia people. However, they had no way of retaliating. The sorcerer god and the great demon god were both ruthless. Their subordinates were forbidden from approaching the key areas of the oceanic forest world fortress. In reality, the Xia people did not have any spies within the beast race. Because of the difference in race, it was difficult to plant spies. If not for Elder Ao Land's true meaning of life, the beast race would not have been able to infiltrate the Xia people. The transcendence of the Xia people in the Xia capital were all very excited. The explosion had occurred in mid-air outside the infernal palace, and many had seen it. That terrifying explosion had been easily suppressed and extinguished. This made them even more confident. The foundation of the Xia people is indeed extraordinary. The ancestors of the Xia people have indeed made many preparations. They were all very happy. Jing Qiu's avatar and palace lord Chen, who knew the truth, did not say anything. Dongbua Shuiying's matter was still a secret. In the blink of an eye, 2 years had passed. Dongbua Shuiying had been in Crimson Rock Mountain for 25 years, and on Crimson Dust Island for more than 20 years. Goo Goo Goo, a blood-colored lake in the fortress had gradually dried up, leaving only a small amount of blood-colored liquid that was bubbling. An 8-meter-tall giant humanoid body lay in the middle of the lake with a vigorous aura. Its breathing was deep and powerful, and its chest was also rising and falling slightly. The giant phantom of the demon god's skull that appeared beside the lake let out a laugh. Ha ha ha, it's finally done. This body has been nurtured. I've been waiting for you. The golden-robed phantom beside him said, Great demon god, since your fleshly body has recovered, we can begin the plan. Begin descending. The phantom head of the great demon god said in a low voice. Boom! A vortex began to appear above the humanoid body, vaguely connected to the distant and ancient dark abyss. The dark abyss was an existence that stood on equal footing with the divine realm. Countless demons and demon gods lived there, and there were many that were even more powerful than the great demon god. If one were to say that the descent of an ordinary demon god's heart world projection would cause a huge commotion, the descent of the great demon god's divine avatar would cause a very small commotion, and its power would be completely controlled so that it wouldn't leak out at will. This was the power of control. Hua! An indistinct blood-red phantom flew out from the vortex, instantly drilling into the humanoid body. The humanoid body slowly opened its eyes, which were filled with blood-red flames. Following that, it floated up into the air, and its body began to change. Two very long curved horns grew out of its head, and its face began to become thinner. The lines of the scales on its body also began to change. When the transformation was complete, this terrifying demonic body of his stood in midair, naturally emitting a sort of artistic beauty. Or perhaps, it was a kind of combat beauty that conformed to the laws of the heavens and earth. Bang! Following that, blood-red flames began to rise from every part of its body. The flames enveloped every part of its body. As a result, his entire body couldn't be seen clearly. He could only see a humanoid figure of flame standing in midair before slowly descending to the ground. Breathing in the material world, how nostalgic! The flaming figure said. It casually waved its arm, and could feel an inexhaustible amount of laws surrounding it, binding it, and even faintly repelling it. As long as it willed it, it could follow this repelling force and leave this mortal world with a single thought. The material world really doesn't welcome me. Laws are binding everywhere. The flaming figure gritted its teeth. Fortunately, this fleshly body is that of a native of this world. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be able to descend here. Even if I wanted to upgrade this body, I would be suppressed. Descending into a deity avatar was just that frustrating. It was completely suppressed. Its fleshly body was suppressed, its strength was suppressed, and its speed was suppressed. However, it's enough. Even with this bit of strength at the limit of a demigod, with my current realm, killing some newly ascended deities is still an easy task, the great demon god's avatar muttered. I can easily kill a newly ascended deity. Great demon god, you are much stronger than me. Another figure walked in. It was a golden-robed man with a sinister look in his eyes. This was the avatar of the sorcerer god. Although his talent was high, it was far from being comparable to a grade 1 true meaning transcendent. A grade 1 true meaning transcendent could condense a grade 1 deity heart within 3,000 years. The sorcerer god, on the other hand, had cultivated for an extremely long period of time before finally breaking through to the world deity realm. That's right. As long as one grasped a grade 1 deity heart and accumulated enough deity energy, one could cultivate all the way to the stage 1 world deity realm. The great demon god had cultivated for an even longer period than the sorcerer god. He was an ancient stage 2 world deity. This time, it should be quite easy. The great demon god's avatar said, however, my only worry is Dongbu Shuang. When I asked the temporal temple, they asked for a total of 500,000 deity crystals, but they only gave me one answer. Dongbu Shuang is still alive. He's still alive within Crimson Rock Mountain. As for information on his combat power, there was no information at all. If the temporal temple had detailed information on Dongbu Shuang's combat power, this information would be worth more than 500,000 deity crystals, the sorcerer god's avatar said. They too wanted to know the details of the Xia people's combat power. However, this information was even more valuable. The two of them did not buy it. From their point of view, other than Dongbu Shuang, the Xia people were not worth caring about. As for Dongbu Shuang, he had always stayed within Crimson Rock Mountain. The temporal temple only knew that he was alive. As for his combat power, it was a mystery. Relax. How long has Dongbu Shuang been cultivating? The sorcerer god's avatar sneered, we won't be relying on our avatars to fight him. We have plenty of war weapons. And then, the great demon god's avatar was also very confident. Previously, they were worried about that person from the temple of the earth god. They were also worried that the spatial passageway would be destroyed when they were just starting to build it. After all, the other party was a stage 3 world deity with an extremely high realm and could arrive at the spatial passageway in an instant. But as long as the construction was successful, they would be able to send a large number of war weapons into the Xia people's world. Let's go. The sorcerer god said. Let's go. The great demon god nodded, I'll control the battleship. The two of them did not bring any subordinates. After all, the construction of the spatial channel had to be kept secret. Moreover, subordinates? As long as the spatial channel was built, there would be an endless stream of subordinates arriving. Who? Soon. A small crimson battleship, merely 100 meters long, was being controlled by the great demon god's avatar. Noiselessly, it left the fortress. Even the naked eye could not detect it. It left the oceanic forest world and entered the spatial layer. Noiselessly, it flew through the spatial layer. Soon, it passed through the membrane and arrived at the Xia people's world. This was a vast desert. This was the place chosen by the great demon god and the sorcerer god. This place was desolate and uninhabited. The battleship was still flying, but it was impossible for the naked eye to detect it. Begin preparations. Activate. Everything happened in the void. The great demon god and the sorcerer god moved together. In a matter of seconds, they had set up the temporary equipment and activated it. Hong! A wave of terrifying power suddenly erupted. It could no longer be concealed. A dazzling gray pillar of light shot into the sky. The sky was torn open, revealing a hideous and pitch-black spatial channel. This spatial channel not only tore through the inner membrane, but it also pierced through the outer membrane of the Xia people's world. It connected to another mortal world far away. This huge commotion was instantly discovered by the Xia people. The Xia people had long been on high alert. It was just that the great demon god's cultivation level was too high, so the Xia people had not discovered him. What a huge commotion! It's a spatial fluctuation. The outer membrane has been pierced through. The dirty old man on the fishing boat, Chao Qing, stood up abruptly. He took out his communication wristband from his storage treasure and contacted the Xia people for the first time since leaving Crimson Rock Mountain. Palace Lord Chen, I am Chao Qing. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Chapter 370. Infernal Realm, Xia Capital. Dong! 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 The deep sound of the drum reverberated throughout the entire Xia capital, and even further away. Countless people in the Xia capital listened attentively. 3 beats, 4 beats, 5 beats, a total of 9 heavy beats. Everyone understood what had happened. In the history of the Xia people, when the drum of the infernal palace was sounded, 9 beats would only mean one thing: a calamity was about to descend. In the history of the Xia people, they had been forced to retreat to the infernal realm time and time again. Countless people in the mortal world outside had been slaughtered and eaten. And now, such a calamity was about to descend once again. And according to some of the previous rumors, the severity of this calamity was far greater than the past. Has the war begun? Dongbua Qingshi, who was in the midst of researching spell models, looked up anxiously. But why hasn't my brother returned yet? The matter of Dongbua Shuang entering the Crimson Rock Mountain was kept from his younger brother and parents. Afterwards, the entire Xia people began to migrate. Qingshi, Dongbua Lai and his wife naturally asked about Dongbua Shuang. Jing Qiu only said that Snow Eagle had gone to a very important place to fight for his life. If he succeeded, he would be able to get rid of the poison and return. The war has begun. In another part of the mansion, Dongbua Lai, Mo Yangyu and Zhong Ling, who were originally sitting together and chatting, suddenly stood up, their faces filled with shock. The war has already begun. Where's Snow Eagle? Snow Eagle hasn't returned yet. The war has begun. But we don't even have the qualifications to intervene. Damn it. The Transcendents were incomparably anxious. Pu Yangbo, Zhuai, Gongliang Yuan and the rest were all extremely nervous. They began to communicate with each other and met up in groups of 2s and 3s. A Dingjiu battleship floated above the infernal palace. Palace Lord Chen began to issue orders through his communication wristband. All demigods of the Xia people, heed my command. To prevent spies, all demigods are to enter the different cabins of the Dingzhou battleship. Okay. Let's go. Dressed in a long robe, Mountain Lord He's eyes were as calm as the sea. With a single leap, he soared into the sky and flew towards Dingzhou's battleship. After all these years of cultivation, especially with the help of the many spirit fruits and treasures Dongbui Shuang had sent over from Crimson Dust Island, Mountain Lord He's strength had taken another step forward. Originally, he had a grade 4 deity heart, but now, it had evolved into a grade 3 deity heart. He still maintained his position as the #1 demigod on the surface. However, he was still unable to open his divine sea. Whoosh! Qiu Qibai also soared into the sky. He was currently at the peak of the Stage 3 realm in his Grade 3 true meaning, and his combat power was second only to Mountain Lord He. Before Mountain Lord He grasped a Grade 3 deity heart, Qiu Qibai was once ranked first in the demigod list for a short period of time. Now, he was ranked second. We must win this battle. Si Kong Yang wore the 9 Dragons Fire deity armor and his battle intent surged. He also flew out from a courtyard in the Infernal Palace and flew towards Dingzhou's battleship. War. Grand Elder Palace Head, City Lady Bu, the other demigods, and even the newly promoted demigod Yuan Qing all flew towards Dingzhou's battleship. On the contrary, Jing Qiu, who had also become a demigod, did not appear. Caw caw caw. There were many small cabins within Dingzhou's battleship. In order to prevent spies from hiding within, everyone was temporarily separated. In fact, it was almost certain that there would be spies. Because other than Shiyun, no other demigod spies from the demonic faction had been discovered. Who? This Dingzhou's battleship rapidly broke through the skies and left. Under the gazes of the countless people in the Xia capital and the Transcendence, Dingzhou's battleship rapidly left the infernal realm. In the distant, vast, and mysterious deity world, there was a planet that was sealed by layers of arrays. Countless precious flowers and plants grew on the planet, as well as some rare insects and beasts. A group of peak deity experts were stationed here for a long period of time to conduct research. This azure dark flower is a variant. Compared to the original, the longer it grows, the greater the difference. I just don't know what its medicinal properties are. An amiable old man with 2 tufts of beard was currently looking at an enormous plant with a diameter of more than 100 meters, the azure dark flower. This plant only had a single flower bud, and it was a strange flower that was suffused with a deep azure color. Furthermore, every single petal had an ugly diagram on it. Brother Purple Thunder, under the acceleration of time, this azure dark flower will mature in another 3 years. At that time, we can carefully study it. A tall and skinny man beside him laughed. If we succeed, the 2 of us will have contributed greatly. At the very least, we'll be able to rise by a rank. What's the point of thinking so much? Let's peacefully study it. The amiable old man laughed. The 2 of them were merely pharmacists at the bottom of the Bloodshed God Palace's enormous organization. However, being able to become a part of the Bloodshed God Palace was enough to make countless deities envious. Even peak deities who could enter the Bloodshed God Palace were few and far between. Suddenly, the amiable old man's expression changed. He turned to look in a certain direction, the direction of the material world. The war has begun. I've done everything I can. The descendants of the Xia people will have to depend on you. The Purple Thunder Emperor was ultimately not a world deity. Even if he joined the Bloodshed God Palace, he would only be at the bottom. The amount he could help the Xia people was limited. Come, come. Those who wish to join the Sky Sword sect, stand over here. The higher-ups of the Sky Sword sect are about to arrive. Don't offend or anger them. It'll be an injustice if you die here. A group of Transcendents were waiting in an empty space beneath the mountain. Who? In the distance, a large ship flew over. There was a group of experts on it, each of them giving off a grand aura. Even the weakest of them were deities. The Heavenly Sword sect was a top-notch sect that was quite famous in the surrounding dozen or so star fields. Every time, there were countless transcendents that desired to enter the Heavenly Sword sect and were brought to the distant Heavenly Sword planet. It was just that the Sky Sword sect was very strict in accepting disciples. Usually, only those who had hopes of becoming a deity would be brought away. The large ship slowly descended. The one leading them was a white-robed, long-haired male. Behind him were two groups of subordinates. Elder Yunhai, there's a young fellow from my hometown. He's that purple-robed youth with a sword on his back. One of the subordinates transmitted to him. He had already given him some benefits before coming. Elder Yunhai nodded. Looking at the group of young transcendents, he swept his gaze across them before releasing a terrifying pressure. Those who can remain standing have passed the initial selection. Hong Long Long. The powerful pressure caused the group of transcendents to feel incomparable terror. This caused the deities to sigh with envy. He was indeed in existence who had stepped into the peak of the deity realm. He was just a step away from becoming a world deity, yet his pressure was so terrifying. However, they were clear that this step from a deity to a world deity was akin to a chasm between heaven and earth. Other than the purple-robed youth with a sword on his back, who was receiving care from the shadows, the majority of the transcendents could not bear it and knelt down. The 125 transcendents standing here have passed the preliminary selection. The rest of you may leave. One of Elder Hai Yun's subordinates said loudly. Elder Yunhai's expression suddenly changed. The people of Xia, Elder Yunhai looked towards the direction of the material world. A long time ago, he was also a young and tender mortal. He grew up step by step until he became a deity. He left the mortal world and entered the deity world, cultivating all the way to his current level. He had always been worried about his hometown. Children, I've already done everything I could. Whether the Xia people live or die, it all depends on you. Elder Yunhai silently said. Old 5, you will be in charge of the next selection. Elder Yunhai ordered. Yes, Master. Immediately, an early-stage deity disciple stood out. Within a battleship shuttling through the starry sky. A group of deities were gathered here. All of them were at the peak of the deity realm. They could be considered as an elite adventurer team. Among them was a dispirited man who was hugging a blade. The war has begun. The dispirited man looked towards the direction of the material world. That was his hometown. I still wanted to take the risk to obtain more treasures. Unfortunately, it's too late. He was one of the 3 surviving peak deities of the Xia people, the Scarlet Flame Monarch. The Scarlet Flame Monarch and the Scarlet Cloud Emperor were 2 of the most outstanding figures in the history of the Xia people. The 2 were like brothers. For example, the Infernal Palace was sent back by the Scarlet Cloud Emperor at all costs to establish the foundation of the Xia people. However, the Scarlet Cloud Emperor was already dead. One by one, the ancestors of the Xia people received the news. Some of them were even weaker, but they still cared about their hometown. Even so, there was a limit to what they could do. Crimson Rock Mountain, on Crimson Dust Island above the clouds. Master, there's a spatial ripple. A very powerful spatial ripple. The outer membrane of this mortal world has been penetrated. This was a message from the blood-creeping flower. Dongbua Shuang had also given it a communication item. He was worried that the efficiency of the Xia people's detection abilities would be too low. The blood-creeping flower, on the other hand, had infiltrated the Xia people's world. It had long since reached the deity level, and its senses were much sharper. Dongbua, the sorcerer god and the great demon god have begun to establish a channel. The war has begun. Jing Qiu came to find Dongbua Shuang a few seconds later. They're finally here. Dongbua Shuang held Jing Qiu's hand and flew directly into the air above his courtyard. At the same time, he called out, Senior Crimson Rock, please send us out. Dongbua, you must be careful in the war. Crimson Rock, Shi Wei, Goodbye, and He Fei Yun all appeared by his side almost instantly. Be careful, the thick-robed Goodbye said. If you can't hold on, then return to Crimson Rock Mountain. As long as you refine the realm core within 10,000 years of your lifespan, you will still win, the scarlet-cloaked youth said. All of them exhorted. Dongbua is in a hurry. Cut the crap. Senior Crimson Rock waved his hand. Hua! Dongbua Xueying and Jing Qiu disappeared at the same time. They had been teleported to the Xia people's world. End of chapter. The crucial battle had finally begun. Dongbua Xueying had been in seclusion for so many years, all for the sake of this battle. MHM. I'll sort out the plot tonight. Tomorrow, I'll officially begin chapter 13. Chapter 371. The Dingjiu battleship pierced through space at high speed, hurrying towards the western desert of the Xia people's world. Chao Qing was currently piloting the Dingjiu battleship. Vast amounts of deity power poured into the battleship, allowing the battleship to display its true power. In truth, even Chao Qing could only unleash a portion of the battleship's power. Because his cultivation level was not high enough, many of the battleship's arrays could not be fully activated. Fortunately, this was a low-grade battleship of the Dingjiu sequence. As an early deity, he could still barely control it. If it were a high-grade battleship, it would require over 100 peak deities, or even an entire deity army to control it. Who? Piercing through space. Ripples appeared in the air above the desert, and a pitch-black deity battleship appeared. That is, Palace Lord Chen, Mountain Lord He, Grand Elder Palace Head, City Lord Bu, Chou Chibai, Si Kong Yang, and the rest had yet to recover from the shock of Chao Qing becoming a deity when they saw the scene in front of them. In the distance, a huge grey castle in the shape of a hexagram towered there. At the center of the castle was a conical roof, which emitted intense spatial ripples. Clearly, there was a stable spatial tunnel within it. So big. This grey castle covered an area of 10,000 li. What did 10,000 li mean? Ordinary mortals would not be able to see the end of it. Even the demigods of the Xia people felt that this huge castle covered half the world. The castle itself was over 1,000 li high, and had long since pierced through the clouds. It was even more majestic than any mountain in the Xia people's world. The 1,000-meter-long Dingjiu battleship was like an earthworm compared to it. Look, the outer layer of the castle. Holes began to appear on the surface of the huge castle. Battleships began to fly out of the holes. Each battleship was dark green in color, and was 1,000 meters long. There were complicated runes on the bodies of the ships. These were the characters of the deity realm, and when translated into the language of the Xia people, they read, C9. C9. Palace Lord Chen's expression changed. This is Battleship C9. Battleship C9 was also a standard battleship of the God realm. However, compared to Dingjiu's warship, it was a level higher. One of them could buy hundreds of Dingjiu's warships. Rumble, above them, the illusions of the vast ocean appeared. Moreover, there were many illusions of the ocean. These illusions of the ocean even overlapped with each other. Opening the deity ocean. The demigods of the Xia people were alarmed. So many people are becoming gods at the same time. Inside this huge fortress, the golden-robed sorcerer god avatar and the great demon god avatar stood side by side, calmly watching everything unfold. The spatial passage has been established, and the fortress has been stabilized. The avatar of the sorcerer god revealed a smile. We've succeeded. Even if a god's avatar appears now, it won't be able to threaten us. Forget about a stage 3 world deity. Even if a powerful existence from the deity world were to personally descend a deity avatar, it would only have the power of a peak demigod. Don't even think about breaking through our fortress. Sorcerer God, don't be too arrogant. If a powerful existence really wanted to kill you, why would he need to descend a deity avatar? The great demon god teased. Ha ha ha. The sorcerer god laughed. How could I have the qualifications to provoke a powerful existence to deal with me? I was too happy just now, so I spoke casually. The great demon god laughed as well. His entire body was bathed in flames. Even when he laughed, one could only see the corners of his lips curling upwards. Once the spatial passage is stabilized, lower the fortress and protect the spatial passage. This is already considered a success, the golden-robed sorcerer god said. The next step is to completely transform the entire Xia people's world into a gigantic fortress. This will require some time. And then the great demon god nodded. You and I have prepared so many methods, but it seems like none of them will be of any use. They brought along a large number of demigods. There were even a few demigods who had reached the threshold of becoming gods. At this moment, they were all becoming gods. Great Sorcerer God, the first fortress has been stabilized. Great Sorcerer God, the second fortress has been stabilized. This gigantic fortress was in the shape of a hexagram. Other than the central fortress, there were 6 smaller fortresses at each corner. The main purpose of the fortress was to stabilize the spatial passage. Most importantly, the 6 corners were to support it. The Sorcerer God and the others had personally set up the main fortress at the first instance. There was no hurry to set up the second fortress. There's a spatial fluctuation. The great demon god looked into the distance. Other than this Dingjiu battleship, what else do the Xia people have? The Sorcerer God looked into the distance, puzzled. Could it be Dongbu Shuang? It should be him. This Dongbu Shuang has been hiding all this while. Now, he has finally shown himself. But even if he does show himself now, what's the use? The great demon god laughed coldly. They were too confident in themselves. The Dingjiu battleship of the Xia people hovered in midair. At first glance, he could tell that there were a total of 18 ocean phantoms in the air. 18 of them had become gods at the same time. Since when had the Xia people experienced such a scene? The towering fortress that covered half the sky, the overlapping ocean shadows in the sky, the battleship C9 with an extraordinary aura, it was clear that with the establishment of the stable spatial passage, the Sorcerer God and the Great Demon God could easily bring a large amount of power into the world of the Xia people. Just a portion of their power was enough to stun the Xia people. Too powerful. How could they block it? Even if they had a few avatars, it would be useless. Boom! A pitch-black crack appeared in the space. Within the Dingjiu battleship, Chao Qing, Mountain Lord He, Palace Lord Chen, Qi Qiu Bai and the other transcendents of the Xia people, as well as the Sorcerer God, the Great Demon God, their subordinates who had just become gods, and even more demigod subordinates, were all looking at the pitch-black crack. Only to see 2 figures flying out from the pitch-black crack. A white-robed youth and a light blue-robed woman. The 2 flew out side by side. Snow Eagle! Palace Lord Chen exclaimed in surprise. It's the Snow Eagle! Faction head Si Kong Yang was also excited. He didn't die. He's back! Ha ha ha, it's the Snow Eagle! The Snow Eagle has returned from Crimson Rock Mountain. I knew he didn't die. Chao Qing was extremely carefree. Even an old man like me could survive. How could the Snow Eagle die? Qi Qiu Bai, Grand Elder Palace Head, City Lord Bu, Gong Yu, Yuan Qing, and the other demigods were all incomparably excited. It really is him. He actually came out. In the distant fortress, the Sorcerer God and the Great Demon God were still calm. They believed that victory was within their grasp. Tearing through the spatial passage, they arrived. With a single glance, Dongbu Shuang saw the towering fortress that covered half of the world. He also saw the ocean silhouettes that were gradually dissipating in the sky. It's just as I expected. The Lord of the material world is indeed not someone to be trifled with. Dongbu Shuang muttered softly. He then waved his hand. Boom! A huge object descended from the sky. It was a dazzling golden pyramid. The pyramid occupied an area of 10,000 kilometers, and its height was also 10,000 kilometers. It was majestic and majestic. In terms of height, it was far above the huge fortress. Dongbu Shuang and Jing Qiu instantly entered the huge pyramid. Ying, a misty light shone from the tip of the pyramid and spread out in all directions, forming a huge light barrier. Within the surrounding 10,000 kilometers, everything was covered by this misty light barrier. Naturally, it also covered the huge fortress in the distance. Within the surrounding 10,000 kilometers, all the heaven and earth energy was forcefully controlled. It was as though the surrounding 10,000 kilometers had become a small world. The core of this world was the pyramid. Star Pagoda. Within the Black Fortress, the sorcerer god and the great demon god stared with their eyes wide open. It was as though they had seen a ghost. It can forcefully control a part of the mortal world and form a world of its own. The Star Pagoda, and it's the legendary level 12 Star Pagoda. The gold-robed sorcerer god said in disbelief, "How is this possible?" This Star Pagoda, it was an extremely common weapon of war in the deity world. The area illuminated by the Star Pagoda was their domain. As for the level 12 Star Pagoda, it had already surpassed the domain and could form a world of its own. Chapter 372. Level 12 Star Pagoda. The great demon god and the sorcerer god looked at each other. Their gazes passed through the outer walls of the fortress and looked at the Dingjiu warship flying into the majestic Star Pagoda. The level 12 star tower costs more than 2 million deity crystals. How could it appear in the world of the Xia people? The golden-robed sorcerer god muttered. That's impossible. An ordinary stage 1 world deity would be lucky to take out 1 million deity crystals. He, the sorcerer god, was the lord of the material realm. He was not afraid of offending anyone or taking risks when he stayed in the material realm. Although he had not cultivated for a long time, his wealth was extraordinary and he could easily take out 10 million divine gems. However, this was also the accumulation of his many adventures. If he were to take out more than 2 million divinity crystals in one go to purchase a level 12 star tower, he would have to count his fingers carefully. If it wasn't necessary, neither he nor the great demon god would be willing to be so extravagant. The great demon god didn't have much more god crystals than the sorcerer god. Although he was more powerful, he lived in the dark abyss and had to be careful. He didn't dare to be as unafraid of death as the sorcerer god. Sorcerer god, I originally thought that since you are a territory lord of a material world, you wouldn't need to go through the temporal temple to bring treasures to the material world. The great demon god said, we have already made sufficient preparations, but who would have thought, if they were to transport a star pagoda through the temporal temple, the transportation cost would be at least 100 times. More than 200 million divine crystals. Not to mention them, even stage 3 world deities would have their faces turn black. How could this be? The sorcerer god found it hard to accept. With a gloomy expression, he growled, as far as I know, becoming a guardian disciple is only worth 100,000 divine crystals. Even if he were to become an inner disciple, the most he could ask for was 1 million divinity crystals. Where did he get a tier 12 star pagoda? Could it be that he has become a personal disciple? But according to what I know, the rules of Crimson Rock Mountain state that in order to become a personal disciple, one must either be a transcendent with a grade 1 true meaning or a deity who grasped hold of a grade 1 deity heart within 10,000 years. How long had Dongbu Shuang been cultivating? Could he be a transcendent with a grade 1 true meaning? If it were a grade 1 true meaning transcendent, there would be no need for this battle. There will definitely be a Almighty who will come to take him as a disciple. If a Almighty intervenes, we can only bow our heads, said the sorcerer god. It's impossible for him to be a transcendent with a grade 1 true meaning. The great demon god nodded. A grade 1 true meaning transcendent? Crimson Rock Mountain might have fallen into the world of the Xia people, but just like the gods in the divine realm, they could still communicate with their hometowns in the material world. Within Crimson Rock Mountain, Shi Wei, He Fei Yun, Gubai, and the other world deities could also communicate with the deity world. They could easily send information to the deity world's great existences who were close to Crimson Rock Mountain. With the intervention of a powerful being, this war would naturally end. Almighty beings were high and mighty, there were billions of mortal worlds, and if there was no special reason, almighty beings would not lower themselves to interfere in the internal struggles of a mortal world. When it came to almighty beings, face was even more important. It seems that the world deities of Crimson Rock Mountain are helping Dongbu Shuang, said the sorcerer god. They feel that Dongbu Shuang is worth helping. But how many treasures does Crimson Rock Mountain have? The great demon god's entire body was covered in flames as he growled. Since it has fallen into the material world, the number of treasures inside will decrease. To be able to create a level 12-star pagoda is already quite amazing. Their guess was correct. Crimson Rock Mountain did not have an endless supply of treasures, but Crimson Rock Mountain had a world deity who specialized in refining, Gubai. This level 12-star pagoda was refined by Gubai, and for the sake of this war, Gubai had even refined other treasures to aid Dongbu Shuang. With a world deity specially refined for this war, Dongbu Shuang would have a chance of victory. Wake up! The gold-robed sorcerer god's cold eyes pierced through the outer wall, looking at the distant star pagoda that was emitting endless light. Although I'm not willing to admit it, there are indeed many variables in this war. After establishing a stable passageway, the fortress descended. The two of them believed that, victory. They could not imagine how the other world deities could fight against them. As for Dongbu Shuang, previously, they did not place him in their eyes. Even if Dongbu Shuang became an honorary disciple, so what? But a single level 12-star pagoda made them feel that things were not looking good. Then let's fight. The great demon god's voice boomed. We have a stable spatial passageway that allows us to choose various treasures from the deity world. I don't believe that we can't win against a mere Dongbu Shuang. The sorcerer god nodded. It would be a joke if we can't win against a little fellow. The star pagoda was majestic. In a spacious hall, Dongbu Shuang and Jing Qiu were here. Beside them, many figures condensed. They were Chao Qing, Mountain Lord He, Palace Lord Chen, Qiu Qi Bai, Grand Elder Palace Head, City Lord Bu, Si Kong Yang, and a group of demigods. Their gazes landed on Dongbu Shuang, and they were all pleasantly surprised. Everyone, although my words are not pleasant to hear, I'm afraid that there are still spies from the demonic faction or the beast clan present here. Dongbu Shuang said, that's why everyone is temporarily in their respective regions. Right now, only a projection is here. Haha, that's what we should do. For the sake of war, we can't be too cautious. Palace Lord Chen looked at Dongbu Shuang with joy. I've long guessed that you, Snow Eagle, are still alive. However, no matter how I asked Jing Qiu, she refused to tell me. Palace Lord Chen, I'm sorry. Jing Qiu said. Hey. That's what you should do. Palace Lord Chen was very happy. Chao Qing smiled as he looked at Dongbu Shuang. Dongbu Shuang also looked at Chao Qing and smiled. Old Chao, I already knew that old Chao had returned. However, I haven't had the chance to meet you. I also thought that I would be able to deal a heavy blow to them with the help of Ding Zhou's battleship. Who would have thought that the sorcerer god and the great demon god's strength would surpass my imagination? Chao Qing shook his head. This is no longer a simple battle between deity avatars. They have established a stable spatial passage that connects to another mortal world. Dongbu Shuang said, the sorcerer god can continuously send down treasures from the deity world without going through the temporal temple. This war is indeed very difficult. However, I have made the first move and gained the upper hand by placing down this star pagoda, creating a world around it. Can we win? Palace Lord Chen asked. Instantly, everyone turned to look at Dongbu Shuang. We can give it a try. Dongbu Shuang said, if we can directly destroy that fortress, destroying the stable spatial passage. If we win, they will no longer have any hope of entering. If we lose, we can only retreat to the infernal world. I also have to return to the Crimson Rock Mountain to cultivate and refine the realm core within 10,000 years of my lifespan. If I can't refine it, our Xia people will never be able to make a comeback. Dongbu Shuang said. If they were defeated, the infernal world would be heavily surrounded. In the future, no transcendence from the Xia people's world would be able to enter the Crimson Rock Mountain. Let's give it a try. Faction head Si Kongyang roared. Snow Eagle, has the poison been neutralized? Chi Chiu Bai asked. Dongbush Shuang laughed, of course it's been neutralized. The sorcerer god and the great demon god's actions have exceeded our expectations. This time, it's all up to you. Chi Chiu Bai said. Don't worry, we still have the strength to fight. Dongbush Shuang had just finished speaking. Boom, suddenly, there was a faint tremor outside. Dongbush Shuang and the rest looked outside. The walls of the hall immediately reflected the scene outside. They could clearly see a gigantic plant swaying wildly in the vast desert. Countless vines and bewitching red flowers swayed wantonly. This gigantic plant's height pierced through the layers of clouds, and was comparable to the Star Pagoda. Countless vines permeated the vast desert. Every vine and flower of this gigantic plant was covered with a layer of black liquid. On the surface of the black liquid, there were even complicated deity runes. Dongbush Shuang revealed a smile. That black liquid was a weapon specially made for plant life forms. It was extremely powerful, and had cost Dongbush Shuang 300,000 deity crystals. Combined with the blood-creeping flower, it was like adding wings to a tiger. The blood-creeping flower was also the main combat force this time. Master, should we act? The blood-creeping flower's voice resounded in the sky. Shui man, don't be anxious. Dongbush Shuang spoke, his voice also resounding in the Star Pagoda. On the other side. Inside the fort. Great Sorcerer God. 18 figures stood there and shouted respectfully, each emitting the aura of a deity. The Sorcerer God and the Great Demon God calmly looked outside the fort, and also saw the gigantic swaying blood-creeping flower. Blood-creeping flower, from its size, it should be a mid-deity. In the Star Pagoda, its strength can be increased by 50%. The golden-robed Sorcerer God said, from its appearance, it seems to be some kind of special weapon. It should be able to increase its strength further, or it might even be able to approach the late deity realm. Let's try it first. The Great Demon God spoke. Chapter 373. The 18 of you, each pilot a battleship C9 and test out the blood-creeping flower, the gold-robed Sorcerer God ordered. Yes. The 18 newly ascended gods respectfully accepted the order. As a world deity, the Sorcerer God had quite a bit of power in the deity world. He easily found 18 demigod transcendents within his sphere of influence, who could break through to become deities at any time. These 18 transcendents were incomparably excited to serve the great Sorcerer God. After all, even if they became gods, they would only be mediocre among the billions of gods in the god realm. However, if they made a great contribution, their status would be different. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Very soon, Battleship C9 after battleship flew up from the massive black fortress. Each battleship contained an early deity-level expert. Battleship C9. Even ordinary peak deity-level experts wouldn't be able to afford it. All 18 of them were a little excited, and immediately began to carefully study the many formations inside Battleship C9, trying their best to unleash even greater power. Let's go and play with this blood-creeping flower. A plant life form dares to fight against us? These 18 gods were very confident. In the god realm, they were very ordinary, but in the mortal world, they could be said to be the peak of power. The Sorcerer God, the Great Demon God, and Dongbush Shuang from the Star Tower were all watching this scene. Inside the Star Tower. Mountain Lord He. Although Dongbush Shuang was paying attention to everything that was happening outside, he still went to Mountain Lord He's place and walked side by side with him inside the Star Pagoda. There's something that I need to trouble you with. Snow Eagle, feel free to speak. Mountain Lord He hurriedly said. At this moment, he was also anxious to contribute his strength to the Xia people. It was just that when they saw the massive fortress and the numerous battleships, they felt a sense of pressure. In this war, our greatest reliance is this Star Pagoda. Dongbush Shuang says, this is a level 12 Star Pagoda, it is able to control the surrounding space to form a world. In this world, each and every one of our actions can mobilize even more power. On the other hand, the sorcerer god side would be suppressed, and their strength would decrease. Our strength will increase. In addition, the star pagoda even formed a very stable world membrane. This membrane wall is very tough. The sorcerer god and the others can't break it. Hearing this, Mountain Lord he was instantly overjoyed. Snow Eagle, you mean that the sorcerer god and the others are unable to rush out of the star pagoda? And Dongbua Shuang nodded. They're trapped here and can't get out. Doesn't that mean we'll definitely win? Mountain Lord he was overjoyed. As long as the enemy was trapped for a long time. Wouldn't that be the same as winning? Any weapon of war consumes a lot of energy. Dongbua Shuang shook his head. The energy consumption of a level 12 star pagoda is even more terrifying. If there is no one proficient in array formations controlling it, the most extravagant operation of the star pagoda would require 200,000 god crystals a year. 200,000 deity crystals? Mountain Lord he was shocked. Dongbua Shuang said helplessly, how can it be so easy to trap the sorcerer god and the others while having the geographical advantage? I've stored 600,000 deity crystals in the star pagoda. If I operate it extravagantly, it can last for 3 years. Snow Eagle, you're looking for me. Mountain Lord he somewhat understood. To operate the star pagoda, there are many arrays inside the star pagoda, and its operation is extremely complicated. Dongbua Shuang said, it's 1,000 times more complicated than the Dingjiu battleship. But if one can comprehend a part of the arrays, they can more effectively guide the energy of the deity crystals, and the consumption can be reduced. A year might only require 150,000 deity crystals, or even less. Mountain Lord he nodded. He understood this point. Like the Dingjiu battleship, when controlled by the demigods of the Xia people, a single deity crystal could only unleash a single powerful attack. But if it was controlled by a powerful deity, the power of a single deity crystal could be unleashed over 1,000 times. 1,000 times difference, it was clear that more than 99% of the energy would be wasted. The star pagoda was obviously more complicated. It also had a higher energy requirement. Even the divine energy of 8 to 10 deities would not be enough. It required a large amount of deity crystals to maintain. Jing Qiu has been studying arrays in Crimson Rock Mountain for 800 years. Dongbua Shuang said, her innate talent is extremely high, and she is very suitable to control the star pagoda. But controlling the arrays of the star pagoda is too taxing on the soul. It's even more taxing than controlling a peak deity rank blood refined deity weapon. Jing Qiu is also unable to control it continuously. Thus, I hope that you and Jing Qiu can take turns. Alright. Mountain Lord he nodded and smiled. Mage Jing Qiu's innate talent is extremely high. In your generation, Eternal Wind, you, Jing Qiu, and Yuan Qing are all extremely talented. Perhaps the will of the world knows that our Xia people are facing a great calamity, so it is helping our Xia people, allowing our Xia people to continuously produce geniuses. Dongbua Shuang smiled, perhaps. Mountain Lord he, please hurry and study the arrays of the star pagoda. This is your house, you can control it from here. Within a sealed hall. After Mountain Lord he entered, he could clearly sense the operation of the entire star pagoda. Borrowing the heaven and earth energy, he quickly discovered the countless arrays operating within the star pagoda. It was too complicated. Vigorous godly energy was recklessly surging around. Many of the arrays were forcefully activated by godly energy, causing a large amount of energy to be wasted. But there was no other way. Whether it was Jing Qiu or Mountain Lord he, their realms were too low, so they could only save a little. Even among peak deity rank experts, only a few who were proficient in arrays could perfectly control the star pagoda. At that time, they could save 100 times more energy, requiring only 2,000 deity crystals per year. Unfortunately, such an existence did not exist. Who? Dongbua Shuang took a step forward, passing through space and arriving at the hall where his wife was. Jing Qiu sat cross-legged, controlling the star pagoda. On Crimson Dust Island, she had already studied the Star Pagoda for more than 500 years. Second senior brother Gubai, who had personally refined the Star Pagoda, had given pointers many times, allowing Jing Qiu's control ability to continuously improve. Thus, when it came to controlling the Star Pagoda, Jing Qiu was the strongest. Under her full control, she only required 120,000 deity crystals per year. Dongbua Shuang did not have high requirements for Mountain Lord He. He wanted to first reach 150,000 deity crystals per year, then lower. The longer the Star Pagoda was maintained, the greater their chances of victory. And then, Dongbua Shuang gazed through the Star Pagoda, looking at the outside world. On the vast desert, the swaying huge black blood creeping flower had already clashed with the 18 battleships C9. Hua! Countless raindrops condensed in the air, attempting to corrode the blood creeping flower. A dazzling illusory sword furiously slashed at the blood creeping flower. Countless white silk webs entangled the blood creeping flower. The 18 deity world battleships were far away in midair. They did not approach, attacking the blood creeping flower from afar. The blood creeping flower was incomparably arrogant. Its vines waved about wantonly, and each of its movements could incite the enormous might of the world. With the assistance of the Star Pagoda, its strength had greatly increased. In particular, the special black war weapon on its body made it feel even more delighted. It was clearly a middle-stage deity, but with the assistance of the two, it could display the strength of a late-stage deity. The power of the battleships was suppressed by the Star Pagoda, and was even weaker than a casual swing of the blood-creeping flower's vines. Master, their speed is too fast. I can't catch them. The blood-creeping flower was somewhat anxious as it communicated with Dongbua Shuang. Within the Star Pagoda. Snow Eagle, these deity world battleships can't do anything to the blood-creeping flower, but the blood-creeping flower can't touch them either. Palace Lord Chen said. Dongbua Shuang nodded. The blood-creeping flower is indeed weak in terms of speed. Shui Man, attack the fort. Dongbua Shuang ordered. Yes, Master. The blood-creeping flower immediately became excited. Dongbua Shuang looked at the enormous fort from afar, pondering. In order to destroy the stable spatial tunnel, they had to destroy that fort. Let's see how strong this fort is. Dongbua Shuang thought. The situation is terrible. The sorcerer god and the great demon god were watching the battle through the walls of the fort. The sorcerer god said, under the suppression of the Star Pagoda, the battleship C9's power is barely close to a late-stage deity's. On the other hand, the blood-creeping flower has a true late-stage deity's combat power. Moreover, it has a huge body and countless vines. 18 battleships are completely useless against it. This bit of power is not enough. Add more power and force Dongbua Shuang to use his killer move. The great demon god's body was covered in flames. Since he is able to take out the level 12 Star Pagoda, he must have prepared a method to attack our fort. This blood-creeping flower's power is not bad, but its realm is too low. It can't threaten us. All right. The sorcerer god nodded. Both sides were very cautious. Dongbua Shuang, the sorcerer god, and the great demon god were all very cautious, trying to figure out their opponent's methods. This battle was too important to both sides. Chapter 374. In the depths of the fortress, a spatial passage rippled. Qua. A figure walked out of the spatial passage. It was a man wearing a silver mask. Just by standing there, he emitted a terrifying heat that caused the surrounding space to collapse. Despite knowing that this was the territory of the sorcerer god and the great demon god, he did not restrain his aura. Elder Yuping, the sorcerer god and the great demon god are waiting for you up ahead. Please follow me, a burly demigod said respectfully. And, the silver-masked man replied coldly. Under the demigod's lead, he soon arrived at a hall. The golden-robed sorcerer god's avatar and the flame-bathed great demon god's avatar were both here. Greetings, sorcerer god, great demon god. The silver-masked man bowed slightly and straightened his body. Elder Yuping. The sorcerer god smiled. It seems that the sorcerer god has met with some trouble. In the end, he still made an oath with me, the silver-masked man said coldly. The oath had just been made. If not for the trouble, the sorcerer god would not have asked Elder Yuping for help. Yes, you met some trouble. Your opponent is that Dong Bo Shuang. The sorcerer god began to explain everything in detail, while Elder Yuping looked outside coldly. Beneath the mask, his eyes did not fluctuate at all. He looked at the vast desert outside the walls of the palace and the towering level 12-star pagoda in the distance. Clearly, he was beginning to plan. All right, I understand. Leave this Dongbush Shuang to me. I'll kill him, Yuping said coldly. Give me some time. I'll open my deity see first. Any time. The sorcerer god smiled. Yuping turned and left. The sorcerer god and the great demon god watched silently. This kid is quite insolent, the great demon god said. He grasped 2 grade 2 deity hearts and created a secret skill. He's already been accepted as a personal disciple by the Qilon monarch. If I hadn't used a total of 1.5 million deity crystals and a battleship B9 to invite him, he would have long become a deity. In order to make this oath, I delayed him for nearly 100 years. The sorcerer god smiled. I heard that he even learned a world deity level secret skill. Now is his most glorious moment, how can he not be arrogant? Self-created secret skill. This also represented an absolute transcendent. Usually, they would have the qualifications to be accepted as a personal disciple by some powerful existences. After all, a grade 1 true meaning transcendent was too rare. Once one appeared, even powerful existences would fight to get their hands on one. The Qilon monarch isn't a powerful existence, but he can actually casually pass on a world deity-ranked secret technique to his disciple? The great demon god exclaimed. He had learned a god-level secret technique from his own school. It was a completely different concept from imparting world deity-ranked secret techniques. Almighty existences had very strict control over world deity-grade secret techniques. Even for world deities, it was not easy to learn a world deity-grade secret technique. Sacred Master Crimson Dust was a so-called powerful existence, which was why he had a total of 18 world deity-ranked secret techniques to inherit. However, Monarch Qilon was not a powerful existence, yet, he was still able to impart a technique to his subordinates. This was already very impressive. How can you and I compare to someone who can occupy a large territory in the divine world and have their own empire? The sorcerer god shook his head. But sorcerer god, your information network is really good, to actually be able to find such a demigod. The great demon god praised, those who can grasp 2 grade 2 deity hearts are extremely rare. As for those who can create their own secret techniques, I'm afraid it would be hard to find even one in an entire starfield. Not to mention someone who grasps 2 grade 2 deity hearts and hasn't broken through to become a deity. That's even rarer. I'm afraid that even if you search through hundreds or thousands of starfields, it would still be difficult. Luck. The sorcerer god laughed. This was precisely the kind of absolute transcendent he was looking for. Hua hua hua, in the sky above the desert. An enormous ocean illusion appeared once again. This time, the scale of the ocean illusion was exceptionally large, much larger than the previous ones. It seemed to have filled the entire star pagoda's world membrane. This is, within the star pagoda, Dongbush Shui Ying's pupils dilated. Opening a deity sea, and a very large one at that. Dongbush Shuang felt a strand of pressure. A deity sea that covers an area of 50,000 kilometers. Palace Lord Chen also exclaimed, I've heard that the higher one's realm, the larger the deity sea. The one who has just become a deity is definitely not an ordinary deity. City Lord Bu frowned, the sorcerer god and the great demon god, could it be that they invited an extremely powerful transcendent from the deity world to come here and break through to become a deity? No matter how powerful they were. Even if an outsider became a deity, the world would reject them. It was impossible for them to refine the world will. However, if the enemy was too powerful, it would be troublesome to deal with them. Let's wait and see. Dongbua Shuang said. No wonder Senior Brother Gubai and Senior Brother Feiyun were not confident in this battle. The 18 dark green warships stopped their fight with the blood-creeping flower and returned to the fort. At this moment, another warship flew out. This was a dazzling fiery red warship. It was also 1,000 meters long, and there were 2 deity world runes engraved on it. The moment it flew out, the boundless heat it emitted caused the surrounding space to distort. The surface of the warship was even covered in raging flames. At this moment, it was 1,000 times more dazzling than the sun in the sky. Ordinary transcendents would only be able to see the blazing outer appearance of the warship. They would not be able to see the runes engraved on the warship. Dongbua Shuang had the time immemorial body, so he could clearly see this warship with his naked eyes. Warship B9. Dongbua Shuang furrowed his brows. In the deity world, conventional warships were divided into 4 grades, A, B, C, and D, A1, A2, A3, and even A9. This order represented the size of the warship. Warship A1 was an extremely large warship. It was so large that it covered the sky and was even larger than an ordinary planet. A2, A3. The further it went, the smaller it became. A9 was the smallest, only 1,000 meters long. However, there was an advantage to being small. Usually, a powerful deity would be able to control it. As for A1, it required a large army to control it. Similarly, B1 to B9. B1 to B9. D1 to Dingzhou. Dingzhou's warship could be considered the lowest grade and smallest warship of the deity world. Under the exploitation of the temporal temple, it was already not easy for the ancestors of the Xia people to send down such a warship. Warship B9 is extremely powerful. I wonder who is controlling it. Is it that person who just became a deity? Dongbua Shuang had a bad feeling when he thought about how the deity Ocean Phantom covered an area of 50,000 kilometers. In the history of the Xia people, there had never been such a terrifying deity. Within the cabin of the warship B9, which was emitting dazzling flames, a man wearing a silver mask looked coldly at everything happening outside. The mortal world? He muttered coldly. He was a peerless transcendent who had just become a deity, and he was even accepted as a personal disciple by the Qilin monarch. Why would he place a mortal world in his eyes? An ugly swaying plant life form with a low cultivation. Elder Yu Ping looked coldly at the swaying blood-creeping flower that covered an area of 5,000 kilometers. Can't even withstand a single blow. Die! The warship B9 flew at high speed. Show! It instantly disappeared from sight. Where? The blood-creeping flower was shocked. It couldn't find the enemy. Shui man, he's already closing in on you. Dongbua Shuang immediately sent a telepathic message. He was only able to find traces of the warship B9 with the help of the Star Pagoda. Although the Star Pagoda was controlled by Jing Qiu and Mountain Lord He, the Star Pagoda was controlled by Dongbua Shuang. However, the Star Pagoda was refined by Shuang and recognized him as its master. Only when Shuang allowed them to control it could they do so. After all, Dongbua Shuang had to be on guard. Although he had absolute trust in Mountain Lord He, who knew if Mountain Lord He was a traitor or not? One must always be on guard against others. This was especially true for a war that involved the fate of the Xia people. Idiot, you still haven't found it? The warship B9 suddenly appeared, but it was already in front of the blood-creeping flower. A cold voice reverberated in the air. Closely after, boom, at the bottom of the warship B9, a huge array diagram appeared. That array diagram erupted with an incomparably dazzling flame. The flame was so dazzling that one couldn't look straight at it for a moment. The area within thousands of kilometers became a sea of fire. The entire blood-creeping flower was completely engulfed in the sea of fire. The sea of fire was incomparably dazzling, and its might caused the surrounding gravel to instantly melt into particles. Closely after, the particles began to disintegrate. Not only the real world, even the mirage began to distort under this flame. This terrifying temperature was terrifying. Master, the temperature of the flame is too high. Moreover, it carries an intense shockwave. Even I am suppressed underground, the blood-creeping flower said helplessly. Within the star pagoda, Dongbu Shuang looked at this scene. The trump cards of the sorcerer god and the great demon god were indeed stronger than expected. To be able to unleash such a powerful attack through the warship B9, other than the power of the warship, the operator also had to have an extremely deep understanding of the array. Fortunately, Shui Man has a deity weapon to protect herself. Dongbu Shuang thought to himself, looks like I have to make a move. Who? With a step, he disappeared without a trace. He left the star pagoda and appeared above the desert outside. Chapter 375. It's the Snow Eagle. Within the Star Pagoda, Palace Lord Chen, faction head Si Kong Yang, Chi Chou Bai, Grand Elder Palace Head, and the others were all shocked by this scene. They had clearly seen the might displayed by the battleship B9 earlier. Even the blood-creeping flower, which could be said to be able to destroy the heavens and earth, had been completely crushed in a head-on clash. Why did Dongbu just go out like that? Are you going to fight barehanded? Why doesn't he have any weapons of war? The transcendents of the Xia people were all worried. The enemy was still using a battleship. He's finally out. Within the towering fortress, the great demon god and the sorcerer god looked at the white-robed youth who had suddenly appeared in the desert. The white-robed youth stepped on the void, his white robes fluttering in the wind, as though he was taking a stroll. He hasn't become a god, the sorcerer god said. I don't feel the aura of a god. He actually didn't use any external objects and just charged out like that. The great demon god was also shocked. Could it be that he wants to fight the battleship head-on with his own strength? Perhaps he still has some treasures that he hasn't taken out yet, the sorcerer god said. The two of them watched carefully. To them, the only obstacle in this war was this Dongbu Shuang. Dongbu Shuang stepped on the void, his speed extremely fast as he walked towards the distant battleship B9. Be it the Star Pagoda or the fortress, they both sealed the surrounding spatial undulations, preventing him from using any means of teleportation. When they were tens of li apart, Dongbu Shuang stopped. Dongbu Shuang. A cold voice reverberated in the air, what, you're going to fight me like this? Lackey of the sorcerer god, great demon god, cut the crap, Dongbu Shuang stood in midair and shouted. I'm not their lackey. They went through a lot of trouble to hire me. I just didn't expect a transcendent like you to be so arrogant. It seems like it was too easy to earn god crystals this time. Inside Battleship B9, Elder Yu Ping watched all of this. Beneath his silver mask, a hint of disdain flashed in his eyes. To dare be so arrogant, they were truly seeking death. But that was fine as well. This would make things easier. Invited? Dongbu Shuang stood in midair. No wonder he was able to unleash the might of Battleship B9 to such an extent. He was truly an extraordinary god. Boom! The distant Battleship B9 suddenly streaked across the sky and drew closer. Dongbu Shuang raised his eyebrows. The speed of the battleship was much faster than his. This was the advantage of war weapons. Hua! A black spear appeared in Dongbu Shuaying's right hand, the tip of the spear glowed faintly with a golden light. He held the spear with one hand, facing everything. Die! Elder Yu Ping said softly and coldly from within the warship. Boom! Beneath Battleship B9, the image of a massive spirit array appeared once more. The spirit array also released a dazzling flame. The surging flames carried an aura of destruction as they swept through the surroundings, instantly engulfing a radius of 500 kilometers around Dongbu Shuang. Just now, when it was dealing with the blood-creeping flower, it had covered a radius of 500 kilometers. Now, it covered a radius of 500 kilometers. From this, one could see that the operator of Battleship B9 had reached an extremely high level of control over the spirit array. The terrifying, destructive flames attacked. Dongbo Shuiying's figure instantly turned illusory as he entered the mirage. Chi, everything around him was incinerated and destroyed. The terrifying heat and shockwaves even seeped into the mirage, causing the mirage to distort. Within the mirage, Dongbo Shuiying watched all of this calmly. Only 1% of the power of the flames had seeped into the mirage. It posed no threat to his time-immemorial body at all. Forget about the mirage, even in the real world, with the power of his time-immemorial body, even if it was only at the first level, it would at most be injured by the attack of this peak deity-level spirit array's flames. In the mirage, however, that was an even bigger joke. The flames dissipated. Dongbo Shuiying's figure reappeared in the real world. His white robes were as clean as before, without a speck of dust on them. Inside Battleship B9, Elder Yu Ping's expression changed slightly. I've heard that he's proficient in the 3 true meanings of extreme piercing, mirage, and star. Even if he hides in the mirage, he can easily resist it with just his body. Even if it was just 1% of the power of a peak divine level expert, it was not something that a transcendent body could withstand, right? Then let's change to another formation. Elder Yu Ping sneered. Different laws of profound mysteries would have different effects when entering the mirage. For example, a complete space Dao could penetrate the mirage 100% of the time. On the other hand, a pure explosion like the divine flaming thunder, with its extreme power and no laws of mysteries, would not even be able to penetrate 1/10,000th of the mirage. Only the core area of 100 meters could destroy the mirage forcefully. The threat of the other areas to the mirage could be ignored. This was the so-called great strength. However, if one did not have any laws of profound mysteries, it would be a joke. Without his realm, he couldn't even sense the ethereal extent. How could he attack? And on Battleship B9, there were also several types of formations. Each formation had different offensive profound mysteries, and the threat they posed to the mirage was also different. Formless ripples emanated from Battleship B9, spreading in every direction. Wherever these ripples passed, even the dust in the air was pulverized into nothingness. Dongbo Shuiying's illusory figure entered the mirage, and then exited it, still completely unharmed. The formless ripples that had penetrated the mirage still had 30 to 40% of their power. True meaning circulated around Dongbo Shuiying's body, as if the vast earth itself was slowly rotating. More than half of the power was dissipated, and when it entered Dongbo Shuiying's time-immemorial body, it was not affected in the slightest. Through the perception of his domain, he could judge the power of these ripples. If they had been a threat, he would not have used his body to directly resist them. Clearly, this bit of power was not enough to hurt him. What? Inside Battleship B9, Elder Yu Ping was shocked to see Dongbo Shuiying's illusory figure turn solid again. It's still useless. Even he himself did not dare say that he could withstand such an attack. The formless ripples were too destructive to his body, but this transcendent had managed to resist them. How could he have known that Dongbo Shuiying cultivated the #1 life-saving world deity-grade secret technique of Crimson Rock Mountain, the time-immemorial scripture? Terrifying flames that could destroy everything, sinister ripples that swept out, huge formation diagrams that strangled him, and hundreds of fire dragons that surrounded him. For consecutive attacks, each with their own specialties. But as Dongbo Shuiying walked in mid-air, his figure became illusory at times, and real at others. These attacks did not even harm a single hair on his head. In truth, other than the ripple attack that could ignore material defenses, the other 3 attacks could not even be considered a threat. He actually withstood it. Inside Battleship B9, Elder Yu Ping was somewhat stunned. This Battleship B9 was something he had personally chosen. Back then, he had requested for this battleship as a deposit, which was why he was not in a hurry to become a deity and waited for nearly 100 years. This battleship's formation arrays were extremely compatible with the 2 Grade 2 deity hearts he had comprehended. Thus, even with the Star Pagoda's suppression, this battleship could still display peak deity power. But this transcendent in front of him had actually withstood it. How could he have known? This transcendent's body was so terrifying that even ordinary deities could be casually pinched to death. His defense and life-saving abilities were even more heaven-defying. Moreover, he could fuse with the mirage and had self-created defensive true-meaning secret skills. Killing him would be extremely difficult. Even Senior Gubai and He Fei Yun believed that killing Dongbui Shuang in the mortal world was practically impossible. This transcendent, the sorcerer god and the great demon god were both stunned. Such a defensive ability was too terrifying. He must have cultivated a world deity-grade secret technique, and it's a life-saving one at that, the sorcerer god said. A transcendent who cultivated a world deity-grade secret technique was not a deity, but one that surpassed one. Wow! Too powerful. He's practically invincible. The snow eagle is actually this powerful? The transcendents of the Xia people were previously worried, but now, they were all incomparably excited. Palace Lord Chen and the rest were even flushed red. Looking at their Xia people's Dongbui Shuang, it was as though he was taking a stroll in the park. Just by changing his body from illusory to real, all the attacks were like gentle breezes and drizzles, not even a single strand of his hair was harmed. Such absolute disregard caused the Xia people's transcendence to feel incomparably proud and excited. Dongbui Shuaying's power was much stronger than they had imagined. Clearly, the strongest transcendent in the history of the Xia people had truly undergone a metamorphosis in Crimson Rock Mountain, and was beginning to reveal the brilliance he should have. If this is all you've got, then scram. Dongbui Shuang ignored the battleship B9, stepping through the void towards the distant fortress. Although the battleship B9 could not harm him, Dongbui Shuang also knew that he could not harm his opponent, who was hiding within the battleship. Other than attacking, the battleship's main purpose was to escape and preserve one's life. Damn it! A furious roar rang out, and a figure flew out from the battleship B9. With a wave of his hand, the silver-masked man kept the battleship beside him. You're out. Dongbui Shuang turned to look at him. The battleship's attacks only have those few arrays, Elder Yu Ping said coldly. It's impossible for me to unleash my full strength. Dongbui Shuang, listen well. I'm Yu Ping, the personal disciple of the deity world's Qilin Empire. Don't die. You won't even know who killed you. Personal disciple of the Qilin Empire's emperor? Dongbui Shuang looked at the other party. What a great reputation. Unfortunately, combat still depends on strength. Chapter 376. My reputation has been earned through strength. Elder Yu Ping's eyes beneath his silver mask were filled with a hint of madness. I can tell that you must have learned some sort of life-saving world deity-grade secret technique in Crimson Rock Mountain. Unfortunately, just because you're good at life-saving doesn't mean that you're good at combat. I'll let you, a transcendent genius of a tiny mortal world, understand just how vast the world is, and how many experts there are. As soon as he finished speaking, an invisible energy descended, enveloping the entire area, including Dongbui Shuang. Within this vast domain, Elder Yu Ping was the core, he was the master. Deity domain? Dongbui Shuang immediately understood. Yu Ping, the light of the level 12 star pagoda has formed a world of its own. Your deity domain is useless here. Is that so? Yu Ping sneered. When countless ripples appeared within the domain. With Yu Ping as the center, these ripples spread out in all directions. The entire world seemed to be filled with these ripples. The entire world of the Star Pagoda spanned a radius of 50,000 kilometers, but these ripples were everywhere. Large amounts of ripples also converged on Dongbui Shuaying's body, unceasingly entangling and binding him. Yu Ping's body was emitting countless ripples, while Dongbui Shuaying's ripples were converging on his body. The two of them were the two focal points of the ripples within a radius of 50,000 kilometers. Dongbui Shuaying frowned. He could currently hide in the mirage, and with his current mirage secret technique, condensing reality, he could completely disappear without a trace, leaving no place for his enemies to track him. However, this was the first life and death opponent he had faced after cultivating on Crimson Dust Island for so many years. After dealing with him, the sorcerer god and the great demon god would most likely launch an even crazier counterattack. Thus, Dongbu Shuang felt that he had to use this battle to truly temper his spear arts. If he could use this opportunity to break through and reach the deity heart stage, that would be even more wonderful. How is it? Do you feel that your movements are greatly hindered and your speed is greatly reduced? Yu Ping stretched out his left hand, and a saber appeared in his grasp. The scabbard was simple and unadorned, black, while the hilt was crimson. When I was still a transcendent, I met many opponents in the divine world. I battled them time and time again, and even some so-called genius transcendents couldn't even take a single saber strike from me. I wonder how many saber strikes you can take from me. Didn't your opponent tell you that you talk a lot of nonsense? Dongbu Shuang stood in mid-air with the blood drinker spear in his hand. Do you talk a lot? As soon as he finished speaking, Hua! Elder Yu Ping's entire body moved along with an invisible ripple, and in a flash, his figure disappeared without a trace. His speed was terrifying. Dongbu Shuang could only use the star pagoda to determine his whereabouts. Too fast. Dongbu Shuang was speechless. Elder Yu Ping instantly appeared 100 meters to the left of Dongbu Shuang. At the same time, his left hand gripped the scabbard while his right hand flashed. Shwa! It was as if the sun had just risen from the horizon and was releasing its first ray of light. At this moment, the saber light left behind a ray of light in the air. Too fast. Clang! Shuang instinctively used his spear to parry the incoming attack. He had already comprehended the secret skill of his spear technique, Great Earth. As its name suggested, this secret art was a defensive spear art. Its goal was to be as seamless as the earth itself, making it impossible for enemies to break through. When the saber stopped, it had slashed right at the front of Dongbu Shuaying's spear. The two deity weapons clashed, causing invisible ripples to appear. Shwa! The saber was immediately retracted. The distant Yu Ping had already disappeared, leaving behind a clear trail of saber light in the air. Too sudden, too fast. Dongbu Shuang finally grew serious. Previously, the battleship B9's attacks had been restricted by the formation, and there were only a few of them. True experts, on the other hand, had comprehended the laws of heaven and earth and grasped many profound mysteries. Thus, the stronger one was, the more one would have to rely on themselves. You actually blocked it. Your spear art is quite formidable. Let's see how many sabers you can block. His voice reverberated within the ripple domain. Shwa shwa shwa. Just as Yu Ping appeared to the right, a ray of light flashed by. Behind him, another ray of light appeared. His figure flashed again and again. Saber flashed again and again. Extremely fast. The saber was fast. Fortunately, Dongbu Shuang had grasped a set of secret spear arts. This defensive spear art, Great Earth, had an impenetrable defense, so he was able to block it. However, this was also because the Star Pagoda could track Elder Yu Ping's movements. If Elder Yu Ping couldn't find him and he suddenly attacked, the difficulty of defending would increase exponentially. It was no wonder that when he was a transcendent, many of his opponents couldn't even block a single saber attack from him. Apart from being traceless and having a fast saber art, more importantly, the ripple also restricted Dongbu Shuang. Fortunately, Dongbu Shuaying's body was flowing with the vast and mighty great chaotic true force. This was an extremely violent force, and with such a powerful force, the effect of this restriction was very, very low. As a result, Dongbu Shuang was able to use his spear art to block one saber attack after another. Inside the fortress, the sorcerer god and the great demon god watched. The great demon god was somewhat puzzled. What's going on? He's the personal disciple of the Qilon monarch. How can his continuous attacks be blocked by Dongbu Shuang? Don't be anxious. This is just a way for him to probe his opponent. The sorcerer god had a better understanding of Yu Ping. After all, he was the one who had personally invited Elder Yu Ping. Even when facing Dongbu Shuang, Elder Yu Ping is still very cautious. His current attack style allows him to attack and defend at the same time. When he reveals his fangs, Dongbo Shuang won't be able to block it. The distant transcendence of the Xia people watched. But Elder Yuping was too fast. So fast that they couldn't even see a trace of Elder Yuping. Dongbo Shuang could at least see Elder Yuping clearly when he revealed himself to attack. At other times, he had to rely on the Star Pagoda to observe. As for the other transcendents of the Xia people, they couldn't even see Elder Yuping clearly when he revealed himself. This was because as soon as Yuping revealed himself to attack, he would immediately flicker and change his position. Again and again. The transcendents of the Xia people could only see the flickering light of the saber in the air, each time leaving behind a deep black spatial tear. If he were to fight us, I'm afraid we wouldn't be able to react in time. Palace Lord Chen, Chao Qing, Si Kong Yang, the Grand Elder Palace Head, Qi Qiubai, and the others all felt the enormous gap between them. This was the power of a peerless transcendent of the deity realm. Over 100 consecutive saber strikes. Every saber strike could only mean one thing: fast. And they were attacking from different directions. His spear arts are truly tight. Elder Yuping's body followed the ripples and instantly moved tens of kilometers. Then let's just attack. Elder Yuping's eyes flashed with a cold light. Boom! His figure suddenly appeared in midair, both hands gripping the hilt of his saber as he raised it high. The entire saber seemed to transform into a black sun. A pitch-black sun, but countless flames burst forth in all directions. As soon as the saber was raised, the power it emitted caused Dongbo Shuaying's heart to tremble. Ah! The distant transcendence of the Xia people finally saw Elder Yuping's figure clearly. This was the first time since the start of the battle that Elder Yuping had gripped the hilt of his saber with both hands. He gripped the saber with both hands and raised it high. It was as if he was holding a sun that was about to be destroyed. Is he going to go all out? Dongbo Shuang gripped the shaft of his spear with both hands. Previously, Elder Yuping had attacked in an instant, but this time, his fighting style was completely different. He was fighting openly. This gave Dongbo Shuang a bad feeling. Die! Elder Yuping roared angrily. Boom! In an instant, the enormous black sun formed by the saber exploded. It was an explosion of the sun. For a moment, the world turned into a vast expanse of whiteness. Nothing could be seen with the naked eye. However, regardless of whether it was the gravity domain, the mirage domain, the extreme piercing domain, or the star pagoda world enveloping him, they all made Shuang understand that within this vast expanse of whiteness, there was a blade fiercely chopping towards him at an incomparably terrifying speed. But this speed was too fast. It was so fast that even though Dongbo Shuang instinctively tried to block with his spear, the spear's speed was too slow. After all, instinctive reactions required time. This saber was so fast that Dongbo Shuang had no time to block it. Bang! Dongbo Shuang was instantly sent crashing into the depths of the desert. The vast expanse of whiteness between heaven and earth began to gradually dissipate. It revealed the silver-masked Elder Yuping, who was standing in midair. At this moment, the transcendents of the Xia people, the sorcerer god, and the great demon god all held their breaths nervously. Cough, cough, cough. With a series of coughs, Dongbo Shuang walked out of the desert. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, then raised his head to look at Elder Yuping in the sky. What technique was that? It's pretty powerful. It made me vomit blood. Under the suppression of the Star Pagoda, Elder Yuping had only been able to unleash the power of a late-stage deity. But that saber just now had soared to the level of a peak deity. Most importantly, the laws and profound mysteries contained within it were extremely terrifying. As a result, this saber was so fast that even Elder Yuping couldn't defend against it, and its power continued to wreak havoc within his body. Dongbo Shuang had also confirmed that the power of this saber was still within the limits of what he could endure, so he didn't reveal his mirage secret technique and chose to take it head-on. After all, this person in front of him wasn't his only opponent. He only vomited blood. Elder Yuping thought to himself. He only vomited blood after I used my secret technique. Chapter 377. The transcendents of the Xia people watching the battle from within the star pagoda were all on tenterhooks. They could not hear the conversation between Elder Yuping and Dongbu Shuang. All they saw was Dongbu Shuang being blasted into the desert, and when he came out, he seemed to be injured. He can injure the snow eagle. Will he be defeated? All of them were anxious, but they could not participate in a battle of this level. Even the sorcerer god and the great demon god were only at extremely high realms. Under the pressure of the planar will, the power of a mere demigod was of limited help. Since you can withstand my blade, you are qualified to be my opponent. Under the silver mask, Elder Yuping's eyes were filled with madness. He had already regarded Dongbu Shuang as his true enemy. Take this. Shua. Elder Yuping disappeared without a trace, his figure entering the ripples and appearing in front of Dongbu Shuang almost instantaneously. Following that, the world turned white. An incomparably berserk power burst forth, and the blade light attacked. Die. Dongbu Shuang did not even try to block. His spear pierced towards his opponent, and the scene of a star expanding and dying appeared in the white. Dongbu Shuang dared to use his body to block the blade. But Elder Yuping did not dare to block the spear. After all, Dongbu Shuaying's great chaotic true force gave his every move the power of a late-stage deity. With the aid of the world formed by the star pagoda and his secret skill, star meteor annihilation, the power of this spear was close to that of a peak deity. Furthermore, the laws of profound mysteries were terrifying and unfathomable. Elder Yuping understood that if he were to block this spear with his body, he would die without a doubt. After all, the world deity grade secret technique he cultivated was more focused on offense and not life-saving. Clang! Elder Yuping's blade immediately changed, blocking Dongbu Shuaying's spear. The collision of the weapons sent shockwaves in all directions. Everything within 1,000 kilometers became a land of death. Some of the soil and rocks underground were crushed into particles and then returned to nothingness. Clang, clang, clang. The weapons clashed continuously. Both sides fought with all their might. Elder Yuping used his saber techniques to his heart's content. He had no advantage over Dongbu Shuang in any other aspect, but he had a huge advantage in speed. Be it the secret skills or secret techniques he had mastered, they were all extremely fast. As a result, he was able to change his moves extremely quickly. Even though Dongbu Shuaying's spear technique was fast, it was obvious that he was being suppressed. He could only meet the opponent's attacks with attacks again and again, even giving up his body to defend and forcing the opponent to defend. Even so, after exchanging dozens of blows, he was still occasionally hit by the saber. Rumble, as the two sides fought, Dongbu Shuang would occasionally be struck by the saber, and he would constantly be pushed back and fall into the ground. Elder Yuping, on the other hand, pursued Dongbu Shuang at an astonishing speed. The speed at which he pursued was even faster than the speed at which Dongbu Shuang was pushed back and falling into the ground. As a result, Dongbu Shuang would never be able to shake off Elder Yuping. From underground, they were killed to the surface. With a single glance, a shockwave from an explosion streaked across the sky, drilling into the ground and emerging from the surface. Within that shockwave was the battling Elder Yuping and Dongbu Shuang. The transcendents of the Xia people watched on nervously, but they could not see the battle clearly. Meanwhile, the sorcerer god and the great demon god, who had extremely high realms, were able to observe the entire battle from afar. Even Elder Yuping's elusive movement techniques were no secret in their eyes. After all, to become a Stage 1 world deity meant that one had to condense a Grade 1 deity heart. The great demon god, for example, had an even higher realm than the sorcerer god. If his true body could descend, he would be able to destroy Dongbu Shuang with a flip of his hand. However, these were the rules. This was the material world, and it was destined to protect these mortals. The deity world and the dark abyss were the vast world of these powerful existences. How is it? The sorcerer god asked, can Yuping win? He has the upper hand. Dongbo Shuang can only rely on his physical body to ignore his defenses and forcefully attack. The great demon god said, I reckon that Dongbo Shuang will be injured every time he gets hit by a blade. The more he gets injured, the more minor injuries he suffers will accumulate into a major injury that might even take his life. In order to kill Dongbo Shuang, this battle might last for 1 or 2 days. The sorcerer god nodded lightly. In the deity world, 2 powerful deities would fight for several days before killing the other party. This was a common occurrence, especially those who had incredible survivability abilities and were extremely difficult to kill. There had even been a few powerful world deities who had been surrounded by an enormous army of deities. They had to fight for more than a year before they were finally killed. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. Dongbo Shuang was often beaten to the point where blood could be seen at the corner of his mouth. In reality, however, this was merely the trembling of his internal organs. Dongbo Shuang took the opportunity to spit out the blood, pretending to be injured. In reality, he had not been injured at all. His speed is so fast. Truly impressive. Dongbo Shuang sighed inwardly. This elder Yuping's secret skill is also inclined towards speed. His world deity grade secret technique should also be inclined towards speed. To think that his speed could reach such a level. His speed is so fast that he is completely suppressing my attacks. Sigh, I have to quickly reach the deity heart realm. Otherwise, the difference in speed will be too great. Extreme Piercing was more proficient in speed. However, his realm was not high enough, and he had yet to reach the deity heart realm. Furthermore, he had cultivated 2 world deity grade secret techniques. One was for protecting his life, while the other, the Great Chaotic True Force, was for absolute strength. Hence, in terms of speed, he was completely suppressed. However, it's time to end this. The reason Dongbo Shuang had been fighting for this hour was to hone his spear techniques. After all, it was hard to find a worthy opponent in a life-and-death battle. Now that his opponent only used the same moves, Dongbo Shuang was already used to it. It was no longer of any help to him in honing his spear techniques. Time to end this. Dongbo Shuaying's great chaotic true force surged into the blood-drinking spear in his hand and began to activate this blood-refined deity weapon. Ying! Yes! From the start of the battle until now, Dongbo Shuaying had not activated the blood-drinking spear at all. He had merely used it as an ordinary weapon. Without energy to activate it, a deity weapon would not be able to display its might. However, the great chaotic true force allowed Dongbo Shuang to have the strength of a late-stage deity. With the help of the Star Pagoda and his secret skill, he could easily reach the peak of the deity realm. If he activated the blood-drinking spear, the power of every move would explosively increase. His attack power, speed, and other aspects would all increase. There would no longer be any tempering effect. Dongbo Shuang had long since realized that his opponent could not threaten his life. Naturally, he would play with him slowly. He could also confuse the sorcerer god and the great demon god. Die! Boom! The blood-drinking spear suddenly swept out diagonally. The shaft of the spear was bent, and in an instant, a dark star seemed to slowly revolve around it. The power of this spear suddenly increased explosively. At such a close distance, this sudden sweep caused Elder Yuping, who had been killing to his heart's content, to be greatly alarmed. He felt the threat of death, and he hurriedly brandished his saber to block. Pang! Secret skill, Chaotic Suppression. This was the first time Dongbo Shuang had used this secret skill. It was also the secret skill that Dongbo Shuang had spent the most time on after learning the Great Chaotic True Force. This secret skill had only one goal: to completely focus on power. Suppression of power. Activating the blood-drinking spear immediately caused its power to rise to the peak of the deity realm. Activating the chaotic suppression, its power was even more terrifying. Ah! Elder Yuping's saber was instantly smashed into his chest by the spear shaft. A vast and mighty force was transmitted into his body as it revolved. His body instantly began to shatter, and he was slammed heavily into the ground below. The earth rumbled, and the surroundings began to shatter, transforming into countless particles that returned to nothingness. These countless particles were like boiling porridge. I almost. Elder Yuping's shattered body instantly healed. A look of terror appeared on his face as he stared at the white-clothed youth in the distance. I almost died. That attack just now, 70% of the life force in his body had been used up. And this was because he had a top-grade deity armor protecting his body. If Dongbu Shuiying's attack had been just a bit more powerful, he might have been able to crush and kill him with a single blow. Clearly, his body was relatively weak. Go, go, go! Elder Yuping no longer dared to fight. Without hesitation, he followed the repulsive force of the mortal world. Whiz! In an instant, he disappeared into thin air. He disappeared from the world of the Xia people, and also from the material plane. Where did he go? In midair, Dongbu Shuiying was somewhat dazed as he stared at the enormous crater in the distance. How had Elder Yuping suddenly disappeared? Even the Star Pagoda was unable to find him. Could it be that he has some sort of powerful stealth technique that even the Star Pagoda cannot detect? That's impossible. The distant sorcerer god and the great demon god were also slightly stunned. Damn it! He escaped. He escaped to the deity realm. The sorcerer god immediately reacted. He could not help but roar angrily, "Trash, trash!" Chapter 379. It was vast, boundless, and boundless. This was the deity world. In the vast starry sky, a silver-masked man appeared out of nowhere. It was Elder Yuping, who had been expelled from the material world. I almost died in a tiny mortal world. Elder Yuping felt some lingering fear, and then some disbelief. But even with the Star Pagoda suppressing me and the Star Pagoda world supporting him, that Dongbu Shuiying clearly hasn't become a deity yet. He shouldn't have grasped a grade 2 deity heart. His realm is still a level lower than mine. He shouldn't have nearly killed me in one move. He had used his secret saber art to block the attack. First his saber, then his top-grade divine armor. He had nearly died in one blow. And I feel that his spear art isn't any weaker than my saber art, Elder Yuping thought to himself. Elder Yuping thought to himself. He was somewhat in disbelief because his secret art was created with the foundation of a grade 2 deity heart. What about Dongbu Shuiying's spear art? It could only be created with a peak stage 3 true meaning as a foundation, but his secret art was comparable. Clearly, in terms of secret arts, Dongbu Shuiying had comprehended them to a higher level. In the vast deity world, the abyss, and the material world, there are truly many powerful transcendents. Elder Yuping sighed inwardly. No wonder even with my talent, I wasn't able to attract a powerful existence to accept me as a disciple. Of course, Sacred Master Crimson Dust was willing to accept many disciples. In reality, powerful existences were high above, and many of them only accepted 3 to 5 personal disciples. Being able to recruit 8 or 10 more inner sect disciples was already very good. Powerful existences were very picky when it came to accepting disciples. After all, those who did not have high enough talent would at most be nurtured to become stage 1 or 2 world deities. What use were they to powerful existences? Thus, Sacred Master Crimson Dust had a good reputation among the lower echelons. Unfortunately, he was dead. I still have to continue cultivating. There are indeed many people more talented than me. Elder Yuping had suffered a heavy blow this time. With a wave of his hand, a battleship B9 appeared beside him, and he entered it. Fortunately, although I didn't get one. 5 million deity crystals in defeat, at least I got a battleship B9. It's not too much of a loss. Who? The battleship quietly tore a pitch-black rift in the vast starry sky and disappeared into it. Elder Yuping and the sorcerer god had made an oath, but he couldn't die in battle. The contract was still very biased towards Elder Yuping. Elder Yuping had been able to ascend 100 years ago, but for this battle, he had delayed it for 100 years. At the time, the sorcerer god had sent him a battleship B9 and told him to wait another 100 years. If he didn't need to fight, then battleship B9 would be free. If he fought and lost, there would be no other benefits. If he succeeded, he would get 1.5 million divinity crystals. It was clear that Elder Yu Ping wasn't willing to suffer too much, regardless of whether he won or lost. It was even more impossible for him to sacrifice his own life. He and the sorcerer god were merely cooperating. Xia People's World. Under the illumination of the towering star pagoda, Dongbo Shuang stood in midair and observed carefully. Impossible. The star pagoda's light is a world of its own. There's no way that Yu Ping could have escaped its detection. Could it be? It took a while for Dongbo Shuang to grow suspicious. He escaped to the deity realm. Dongbo Shuang couldn't think of any other possibilities. There was only one. After becoming a deity in the mortal world, one would feel the entire mortal world rejecting them. By following this rejection, one would be able to leave the deity realm. Of course, if one tried to drag things out, one could extend their lifespan to 10,000 years. At that time, if they refused to leave, they would be forcibly sent away by the mortal world. I just used my ultimate technique and he fled. Dongbo Shuang mused to himself, it's fine if he escaped. At least he won't be an obstacle. This Yu Ping's strength is actually about the same as mine, but with the Star Pagoda's help, I was able to crush him. With the Star Pagoda's help, Dongbo Shuaying's overall strength had increased by 50%. But Yu Ping's strength had been reduced by 50%, which meant that his strength had tripled. On top of that, Dongbo Shuaying's advantage was in strength, while Yu Ping's advantage was in speed. The difference in strength between the two was more than 3 times, which was why Dongbo Shuang was defeated in one move. Of course, Yu Ping's speed was also incredible, and it was hard for Dongbo Shuang to block him. However, with his time immemorial body, he was able to endure it. Where's that godly spirit swordsman? Why did he disappear? I can't find him anymore. Snow Eagle 1. The transcendence of the Xia people within the Star Pagoda were discussing. Dongbo Shuang smiled faintly. He had refined the Star Pagoda, so he naturally knew what was happening within. If I'm not wrong, that godly spirit swordsman should have escaped to the deity realm. Dongbo Shuaying's voice reverberated within the Star Pagoda's hall. Escaped? Escaped to the deity realm? Palace Lord Chen, Si Kong Yang, City Lord Bu, Qi Qiu Bai, and the rest were all overjoyed. Dongbo Shuang searched for a while, and when he guessed that Yu Ping had escaped to the deity realm, he stopped searching. Instead, he rushed towards the dark fortress in the distance, a cold glint in his eyes. Since we've made our move, there's no need to waste time. I would like to see what other tricks the sorcerer god and the great demonic god have up their sleeves other than inviting such a powerful deity. South. He flew over at high speed. Within the Black Fortress, the sorcerer god and the great demon god were both extremely anxious. Damn it, damn it. Truly trash. The personal disciple of the Qilon monarch. A genius transcendent who created his own secret technique, and even became a deity, using top-grade deity-ranked weapons, armor, and boots. But he was actually scared away. The sorcerer god gritted his teeth. Truly useless. What should we do? How can we resist Dongbo Shuang? The great demon god's clone, bathed in flames, said in a low voice, although our realms are much higher than his, due to the suppression of the material plane's laws, our strength can only reach the limit of a demigod. On the other hand, Dongbo Shuaying's spear technique has already reached the peak of the deity realm. The difference is too great. Our chances of victory are very low. With Dongbo Shuaying's spear technique, even a slight graze would turn them into ashes. However, even if they attack Dongbo Shuaying, it might not be of any use. What can we do? Dongbo Shuaying's strength is much higher than we expected. He's a transcendent, but he can actually display the power of a peak deity. The sorcerer god shook his head. Even with the help of the Star Pagoda, he's still too strong. However, they did not know. The great chaotic true force, the blood-refined divine weapon, and the secret technique chaotic crush, even without the star pagoda, had reached the peak of the deity realm. With the star pagoda, his strength had increased. I don't need much. As long as I have the power of a mid-stage deity, I can easily kill him, the great demon god's clone said in a low voice. This is the material plane, not the deity realm or the dark abyss. The sorcerer god shook his head. He's here, the great demon god's clone suddenly shouted. In the distance, Dongbo Shuang had transformed into a stream of light and was charging towards them. Do you want to do it, or should I? The great demon god's clone asked. I'll deal with him, the sorcerer god said. I'll use the voodoo poison. Perhaps it might have a miraculous effect. Great demon god, you should think of a way to deal with Dongbo Shuang. You've lived longer than I have, and there are many strange ways to fight in the dark abyss. If we lose now, the losses will be too great. We need to think of a way to win. In a mortal world, they had encountered a peerless transcendent who could display the power of a peak deity. His spear technique was also extremely high. Moreover, he was able to take out a level 12 star pagoda. Encountering such an opponent, the sorcerer god and the great demon god were speechless. Alright, I'll go ask some friends. The great demon god nodded. Try to stall for time. I'll go ask those friends and see if there's any way to deal with this transcendent. Don't worry. It won't be that easy for this transcendent to defeat me. Who knows, my voodoo poison might be able to kill him. The sorcerer god sneered. He then turned and left. Dongbo Shuang flew towards the distant dark fortress. In the blink of an eye, he had already flown over 50,000 li. The dark fortress in his vision was getting bigger and bigger. Suddenly, he frowned. He looked at an open passage at the top of the fortress. A stream of light flew out from the passage and rapidly flew towards Dongbo Shuang. Chapter 380. That beam of light was a peculiar warship from the deity world. The warship had a total of 9 snakeheads, with the one in the middle being the largest. Hydra? Dongbo Shuang watched from afar. Could it be that the sorcerer god has appeared? The sorcerer god. His true form was an extremely rare and unique demonic beast, the Hydra. The spider queen that Dongbo Shuang had once encountered was extremely talented, and so was the Hydra. The Hydra was naturally famous for its poison. Back then, the sorcerer god had quickly become a deity and improved rapidly in the art of witchcraft poisons. Within 10,000 years, he had successfully refined the world core and become the lord of a mortal world. Since then, he had become quite famous in the deity world, and was given the title of sorcerer god. However, as a lord, his worship was naturally not a standard worship, but a custom-made one. The bow of his worship usually had 9 snakeheads. When Dongbo Shuang saw the appearance of this worship, he vaguely guessed that the one controlling this worship was the sorcerer god's clone. The sorcerer god's clone is controlling this worship. Dongbo Shuaying's heart immediately tightened, and he did not dare to be careless. This sorcerer god's clone was of a much higher realm. Is it the sorcerer god? Dongbo Shuang asked. Who? The Hydra warship, which had already flown for 20,000 li, finally stopped. A voice came from the warship. You actually guessed that it was me? I have long heard that the sorcerer god's true form is a demonic beast, the Hydra. Dongbo Shuang smiled. Since such a warship flew over, I naturally guessed that it was you. Other than you, which one of your subordinates would dare to control such a warship? You know my true form. It seems that the Xia people have collected quite a lot of information. The sorcerer god frowned slightly, and then said coldly. Dongbo Shuang did not explain. This information was actually provided by his 2 senior apprentice brothers in Crimson Rock Mountain. Sorcerer god, you are quite smart. You know that under the laws of the material world, your power is suppressed. So you decided to use a warship. Dongbo Shuang single-handedly held the blood drinker spear and stood in mid-air, looking at the nearby Hydra warship. It's a pity that this warship is useless. That was what he said. Dongbo Shuang, on the other hand, was very cautious. He used his domain to sense carefully, and he also used the Star Pagoda world to carefully investigate all the fluctuations of that battleship. After all, the driver was the clone of the sorcerer god. An existence with a grade 1 deity heart. Kid, you will soon find out how powerful this warship of mine is. The distant warship of Hydra instantly disappeared. Hua! It was even faster than when Elder Yu Ping had steered the warship. In almost an instant, the warship arrived in front of them. An enormous and complicated formation immediately appeared around the Hydra warship, and a terrifying destructive power burst forth from the formation. Countless gray sharp blades swept out in all directions, slicing and destroying everything in their path. Almost in an instant, they had swept through an area of over 1,000 li, and Dongbo Shuang was the first to be attacked. The range of the attack was huge, and the speed was fast. Dongbo Shuang had no way to escape. He could only hide in the mirage and defend himself. The gray blades had also entered the mirage, but they still had 70 to 80% of their power. They directly slashed at Dongbo Shuaying's body. Dongbo Shuaying's true meaning secret skill was also broken through, and the blade slashed at the deity armor on his body. This crazily slashing attack was blocked by the armor, but it caused Dongbo Shuaying's body to tremble, forming countless tiny gray winds. The gray winds wreaked havoc in every part of Dongbo Shuaying's body. However, their power had clearly decreased by a lot. His time immemorial physique was not damaged at all, and he easily withstood the attacks. His entire body felt numb, but it was actually quite comfortable. The raging winds and the surroundings dissipated. Dongbo Shuaying's figure solidified. The power of this warship's attack was still within the range that he could withstand. Through his domain, he could roughly sense the power of the attack, and he knew that it was not a threat. Dongbo Shuang was very calm. If he could not even injure it, what was there to be afraid of? This Dongbo Shuaying's body is really strong. He actually withstood the attack. The golden-robed sorcerer god's expression changed slightly. This warship was custom-made for this war. In order to prevent any accidents, he would be able to control it personally. However, there were only two types of offensive formations on this warship. One was for group attacks, and the other was for single-target attacks. So. The 9-serpent warship that was hovering in midair suddenly shot out one by one. A total of 8 small serpent heads shot out like rays of light, and the moment they shot out, they disappeared into the void. Dongbo Shuang was originally very calm, but the moment the serpent heads shot out, his heart clenched and his hair stood on end. Danger! His domain was also very difficult to sense, but the Star Pagoda world could clearly sense the 8 serpent heads. They moved forward along the ripples of space, and each of them carried a destructive ripple that tore through everything as they charged towards Dongbo Shuang. From the threat that the spear-like serpent heads felt, Dongbo Shuang knew that if he was hit, the consequences would not be good. Break for me! Dongbo Shuang no longer dared to hold back. The great chaotic true force covered his entire body, and he infused it into the blood-imbibing spear in his hand. He immediately used his spear to block the attacks. Pang! The black spear collided with one of the serpent heads. As the two collided, the serpent head was immediately sent flying backwards. Dongbo Shuang felt a wave of cold energy enter his body after being blocked by the spear. However, after it entered his body through his protective true intent and armor, his mixed elements body was able to withstand it easily. Pang, pang, pang. Every single spear had the power of a peak deity. Dongbo Shuaying's spear was like a ghost, flying through the air and knocking away the serpent heads. The 8 snake-headed spears flipped in the air, then flew towards the Hydra warship in the distance, and flew back into the hull of the ship. Damn it! The golden-robed sorcerer god gritted his teeth. How cautious! This warship only had 2 types of attacks. One was a group attack, and the other was a single-target attack. Naturally, the serpent heads had a higher chance of success. Thus, he had intentionally attacked recklessly to make Dongbu Shuang lower his guard. Then, he would attack with the serpent heads. If Dongbu Shuang dared to use his body to block the attacks, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. Unfortunately, when Dongbu Shuang was on Crimson Dust Island, he had spent most of his time researching the Chaotic Crush secret technique. This was because he felt that his greatest trump card was the Chaotic Crush. Naturally, he focused all his energy on this technique. Thus, among Dongbu Shuaying's spear techniques, the Star Meteor Annihilation and the Chaotic Crush, the two most powerful techniques. The Star Meteor Annihilation was a secret technique that combined two true intents. As for the Chaotic Crush, it was a technique that Dongbu Shuaying had comprehended and absorbed a portion of the profound mysteries of the Great Chaotic True Force. Then, he had spent hundreds of years researching it. Because he had spent so much time researching this technique, the moment Dongbu Shuaying sensed the attack of the serpent heads, he could faintly sense that it was similar to a chaotic hole. If he did not understand it, he might not have been able to differentiate the strength of the attack. But if he was able to, he would know how vicious this technique was. Fortunately, the warship's attack was stupid enough. The serpent heads did not change, and I was able to block it. Dongbu Shuang heaved a sigh of relief. If it had been a close-range attack, it would have been difficult to block it. Although the warship's attack was powerful, it was carried out according to the original spirit designs of the warship. It was simple and direct, making it much easier to block. Inside the warship, the golden-robed sorcerer god was also very unwilling, but he had no other choice. His realm was very high. Grade 1 Deity Heart. The two offensive spirit designs of this warship were too simple. Even if they were 100 times more complex, he could still easily control them. But, if the spirit designs were more complex, more energy would be required to activate them. Currently, this warship was powered by deity crystals. If it were an even more powerful spirit design, he would probably need world deity energy to activate it. Currently, he was just a clone, so he was unable to use world deity energy. Transcendents like the Xia people felt that the spirit designs of the deity world warship were too complex. But as a world deity, the sorcerer god felt that the spirit designs of the warship were too simple, and that they were not powerful enough. Who? Dongbu Shuang looked carefully. A golden-robed man flew out from the cabin door of the nine-headed serpent warship. He was a domineering man, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. With a wave of his hand, he kept the nine-headed serpent warship. This golden-robed man looked at Dongbu Shuang. I knew that it would be hard to kill you with the fixed spirit designs of the warship. It seems like I'll have to do it myself. Sorcerer God. Dongbu Shuang smiled. In his heart, however, killing intent was surging. It was the sorcerer god in front of him. He had caused him to suffer from the hex poison for 100 years, and even caused the entire Xia people to be in danger of being exterminated. Of course, this was merely a deity avatar that had descended. To make me spend so much effort to kill you, you should be proud of yourself. The golden-robed sorcerer god stood leisurely in midair. His figure was somewhat blurry, as though he existed in this space, yet not. With just you? Dongbu Shuang sneered. Yes, with just me. The golden-robed sorcerer god nodded. The second watch was over, and there was still a third watch to come. Chapter 381. You sure talk big. Dongbu Shuang did not waste any time. His figure moved, and the blood drinker spear in his hand slashed out. Boom! The spear shaft of the blood drinker spear was slightly bent, and a massive dark star phantom slowly revolved around the spear shaft. The killer move, Chaotic Crush, was unleashed once again, and the surrounding space began to shatter. Everything in its path began to shatter and turn into a stream of boiling particles. The countless particles were like boiling porridge, and a terrifying power spread out for thousands of kilometers as it struck towards the sorcerer god. Dongbu Shuang had deliberately affected such a large area. As long as the golden-robed sorcerer god was touched, he would die instantly with only the power of a demigod. In fact, the Star Pagoda world controlled the power of heaven and earth to attack the sorcerer god. However, the sorcerer god just stood there, as if he existed, and as if he did not. The power of heaven and earth could not touch him at all. Such power! The sorcerer god frowned. He was not afraid of Dongbu Shuang competing with him in techniques and realms, because those spear techniques were child's play to him. But to rely on terrifying power? The sorcerer god had a headache. Humph, the sorcerer god snorted coldly. He took a step forward. Whoosh! Everything around him began to blur. Time and space blurred, and the power of heaven and earth became blurry in front of him. Be it the shadows or the mirage, they all became blurry and distorted. It was as if everything in the world had become blurry and distorted, and only the golden-robed sorcerer god was clear. As he walked forward, Dongbu Ying's terrifying spear came crashing down, but it was as if he was in a different space. The spear swept past. Its power was still blurry, but the sorcerer god was real and clear. Dongbu Shuang hated this feeling. It was as if everything he had comprehended was a joke. Time, space, the mirage, gravity, the power of heaven and earth, everything he could normally sense seemed to become blurry and ineffective in front of the sorcerer god. It was as if everything he had worked so hard to comprehend was a joke. No, this is a misconception. No matter how powerful he is, he's only a demigod. As long as my spear technique touches him, he will die, Dongbu Shuang tried to convince himself. But everything he could feel. Even his own body seemed to have become blurry, and his ears couldn't hear anything. Die! The only clear and real golden-robed sorcerer god in the world had already arrived in front of him and struck out with his palm. His skinny palm ignored the divine armor and pierced into Dongbu Ying's body. Boom! A terrifying attack exploded within Dongbu Ying's body. Then, the sorcerer god retracted his hand and quickly retreated. Dongbu Shuang could feel a strange whirlpool in his body, as though it was going to twist everything and destroy everything. However, the vortex was also suppressed by an even more terrifying law. That was the law of the entire material world. Even almighties were unable to go against the laws. No matter how terrifying the whirlpool's laws and profound mysteries were, its power was only at the limits of a demigod. It was like a needle that even a child could stab into the skin of an adult. However, if the one carrying the needle was an ant, its strength would be too weak, and it would be difficult for it to pierce through the skin. Not to mention an even greater threat. It was the same principle. The time-immemorial body was like an unshakable mountain. This terrifying gray vortex was unable to harm a single hair on Dongbu Ying's body. The golden-robed sorcerer god retreated far away, frowning as he looked at Dongbu Shuang. This is... Dongbu Shuang waved his spear before retracting it. Everything in front of him returned to normal, and the scenery became real. This caused Dongbu Shuang to be shocked. Is this the power of a grade 1 deity heart? The difference in their realms was too great. His own attacks and his own defenses were clearly much stronger than his own, but he couldn't even touch them. When he fought against a transcendent with a grade 2 deity heart, he felt that there was not much difference, and he could even win. However, in front of a grade 1 deity heart, he was like a joke. Let's try again. The golden-robed sorcerer god was unwilling to give up. Boom! Everything in the world remained incomparably real, but the golden-robed sorcerer god became completely blurry, as though he had transcended this world. Xiao! The blurry figure transformed into a beam of light. Dongbu Shuang could no longer see it with his naked eyes. He had to use the Star Pagoda world to detect that the golden-robed sorcerer god had instantly appeared in front of him. Dongbu Shuang once again used his spear art. It was still the chaotic suppression, which was famous for its strength. In an instant, the surroundings began to shatter. The golden-robed sorcerer god's palm easily drilled into Dongbu Ying's body. With a light tap, his blurry figure had already escaped thousands of kilometers away. Dongbu Shuang easily discovered that there was an invisible needle piercing his heart. The tiny needle contained boundless laws of profound mysteries, representing the laws of heaven and earth. However, it was still unable to pierce through, and the needle dissipated. The golden-robed sorcerer god was so angry that he gritted his teeth. I've cultivated for many years and comprehended a grade 1 deity heart. I've truly seen the core of the laws of heaven and earth. A mere transcendent is nothing but an ant in front of me. However, this damnable material world's laws have forcefully suppressed my strength to the limit of a demigod. This Dongbu Shui Ying's body is ridiculously strong. I can't even shake him. If one's realm was too low, they would only have strength and might. Take Dongbu Shuang for example, he could not even touch an enemy. However, if one did not have strength and only had a realm, then the golden-robed sorcerer god would not be able to shake Dongbu Shuang. Of course, under normal circumstances, when one's realm was high, the laws of profound mysteries would naturally activate the laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, a person with a high realm would logically be extremely powerful. However, the material world had its own laws that protected mortals. Even deities could not forcefully enter. Even world deities and powerful existences could only descend with the power of a demigod. This bit of power was enough to deal with ordinary transcendents and newly ascended deities. However, when facing a peerless transcendent like Dongbu Shuang, he was immediately dumbfounded. My realm is still too low. After 2 short moves, Dongbu Shuang was stimulated. This is due to the suppression of the material world's laws. If not for this suppression, I would have died in a single move from the sorcerer god and the great demon god. This won't do. The golden-robed sorcerer god suppressed his unwillingness. My power is still too weak. It seems that I still have to rely on hex poisons. This Dongbu Shuang will recklessly crush me, causing the surrounding mirage space to shatter and turning into primal chaos to pass through. Danger lurks everywhere. I can't attack too many times. If I do, it will be easy for me to fall for it. After becoming a world deity, I cultivated 2 of the most powerful hex poisons. One can be nurtured within a blood-refined deity weapon, while the other can only be controlled by world deity energy. The golden-robed sorcerer god frowned. The hex poison said. The stronger the hex poison, the harsher its survival conditions. Clearly, the stronger the bloodline, the fewer offspring it would have. The world naturally had its own laws that guided all living things. The stronger the hex poison, the harder it would be to control. The golden-robed sorcerer god's body was only at the peak of the demigod level. At most, he could barely control a few deity-level hex poisons. No matter what, I'll give it a try. Just because I can cure the 6 ghosts' resentment doesn't mean that I can cure other hex poisons. The golden-robed sorcerer god stretched out his right hand. 3 of his fingers faintly glowed with different colors. One of his fingers glowed with green light, another with black gas, and the last with purple lines. The golden-robed sorcerer god's control of hex poisons had reached the acme of perfection. Turning into primal chaos to pass through seems to be more dangerous. All things return to void, seems to be more effective. The sorcerer god moved once more. Everything in the world became blurry once more. All the laws began to blur. Only the sorcerer god was real. He strode forward. Dongbu Shuang gritted his teeth, ignoring everything that seemed to blur. He wantonly swung the blood drinker spear, still using the chaotic suppression, trying his best to destroy everything. However, everything he destroyed seemed to have become blurry and indistinct. The golden-robed sorcerer god instantly appeared in front of Dongbu Shuang. His eyes stared straight into Dongbu Shuang's eyes. At that moment, the 2 of them stared at each other. The golden-robed sorcerer god's right hand pierced into Dongbu Shuang's chest. The armor was blurry and did not obstruct him at all. Dongbu Shuang's true meaning's secret skill also did not have any protective effect. The golden-robed sorcerer god quickly retreated, looking at Dongbu Shuang anxiously from afar. Everything in the world returned to normal, but Dongbu Shuang could already feel the hex poisons in his body. Hex poisons. 3 types of hex poisons. Dongbu Shuang's expression changed slightly. I must succeed, I must succeed. The golden-robed sorcerer god anxiously looked forward to it. After this exchange, he believed that even if the great demon god were to act, the chances of success would be slim. The power of a demigod was simply too low for Dongbu Shuang. On the other hand, the hex poisons had a higher chance. If the hex poisons failed, the sorcerer god did not know what to do. A few seconds later, Dongbu Shuang opened his mouth and spat out 3 hex poisons, black, green, and purple. Star. Chapter 382. Failed? The sorcerer god did not have time to worry. He turned into a blurry shadow and flew towards the distant fortress. What a quick escape! Dongbu Shuang snorted coldly, but his heart was filled with joy. He had defeated a transcendent from the god world who had become a god. The sorcerer god's avatar had been defeated by him. What other tricks could they have up their sleeves? The Xia people might be able to win this war. Dongbu Shuaying's confidence in victory was rising. Whoosh! Dongbu Shuaying did not hesitate. He turned into a beam of light and charged towards the Black Fortress. Inside the hall of the Star Pagoda, the group of transcendents from the Xia people could not join in. They were watching nervously. Especially when the sorcerer god attacked. It was too mysterious. They could not understand it at all. All they could see was the sorcerer god stabbing his palm into Dongbu Shuaying's chest time and time again. They were so nervous that they did not dare to hold their breaths. In the end, the sorcerer god had escaped, and Dongbu Shuaying was still fine. The sorcerer god's avatar has already escaped. Shuaying's voice reverberated within the palace hall. The great demonic god's avatar shouldn't be able to threaten me. As long as I destroy that fortress and the stable spatial passage, the sorcerer god and the great demonic god won't be able to call for reinforcements. Their deity avatars can't escape from the Star Pagoda, so I'll be able to kill them after spending a bit more time. Can we win? Are we going to win? Palace Lord Chen and the rest felt their blood boiling. They had thought that the Xia people would not be able to resist the sorcerer god and the great demon god's army of war machines. But the truth was, Dongbu Shuaying's first move was a sweep. There was no need for demigods to participate. Even a deity avatar at the peak of the demigod realm could not threaten Shuaying at all. No matter how many ordinary demigods there were, just the power of the Star Pagoda's world would be enough to crush them to death. It had to be known that the Star Pagoda world was capable of greatly damaging Elder Yuping and the deity realm's worship. Demigod? They would be crushed into nothingness by the majestic power of heaven and earth. The greatest threat, Elder Yuping, had been defeated, and the golden-robed sorcerer god's voodoo poison was useless. Dongbu Shuang had relied on his own strength to give the Xia people hope of victory. As long as he wins, with Snow Eagle's talent, he might even be able to refine the world core. Si Kongyang chuckled, when the time comes, my Xia people's world will be refined. That would be the true and absolute safety. No more demons will dare to invade us, and no more races from other worlds will dare to attack us. The avatars of the gods will not dare to descend upon us. We, the Xia people, will truly flourish. Palace Lord Chen's eyes were also filled with anticipation. Then it will be a new era. Faction head Si Kong. City Lord Bu, who was beside him, teased, back then, you were the one who forced Dongbu Shuang to cultivate the true meaning of water and fire. Don't say any more. Don't say any more, all right? Si Kongyang hurriedly said. Ha ha ha, the transcendents of the Xia people present all let out a rare laugh. It had been a long time since they had felt so carefree. For the first time, they felt that they actually had an advantage when facing the sorcerer god and the great demon god. Xia people. Chao Qing also revealed a smile. He could almost see the Xia people entering a new era, an era that every generation of Xia people transcendents yearned for even in their dreams. Snow Eagle, it's all up to you. Chao Qing looked at the white-clothed youth flying at high speed outside the Star Pagoda. This was the peerless transcendent who would change the era, and also the strongest transcendent in the history of the Xia people. In the future, he would also become the strongest god. And this war would decide the fate of the entire Xia people for many years to come. We must win. Everyone present was filled with anticipation. The Xia people will definitely prosper. Qi Qiubai, Gong Yu, and the rest all watched from afar, hoping for victory in this war. The golden-robed sorcerer god's flying speed was not considered fast. However, with the help of the laws of profound mysteries of a grade 1 deity heart, the obstruction of space to him was extremely small. Although he could only fly 250 kilometers per second, space seemed to have shrunk by 10 to 100 times. Naturally, he was able to traverse thousands of kilometers per second, or even tens of thousands of kilometers. The huge difference in realms, this allowed the golden-robed sorcerer god to quickly enter the fort, while Dongbui Shuang was still flying at high speed. Within the hall of the fort. Damn it! The golden-robed sorcerer god gritted his teeth and roared. The great demon god, whose entire body was bathed in flames, did not make a sound. In this war, the sorcerer god had paid the greatest price. Therefore, according to the agreement between both sides, the sorcerer god would receive the majority of the benefits. I painstakingly plotted for 1,000,000 years and paid an uncountable price to occupy a nearby mortal world. In the end, I used the nearby world as a springboard to connect to the Xia people's world. This took me 1,000,000 years and countless treasures, the golden-robed sorcerer god growled. I was worried that I didn't have enough treasures and dragged you along with me. But now, a mere transcendent has forced me to such a state. To open a passageway and occupy another mortal world was extremely difficult. If not for the fact that the distance between the two worlds was extremely close, most lords of material realms would not be willing to do so. Because the effort and the reward were not proportional. And for the sake of Crimson Rock Mountain, the sorcerer god had to find another mortal world as a springboard. He spared no expense and prepared for 1,000,000 years before finally connecting to the Xia people's world. If he had prepared earlier, he would have launched the war long ago. Sorcerer god, we haven't lost yet, the great demon god said in a low voice. You lost your cool so easily. As a lord of a material realm, you've suffered far too few setbacks. If this was in the dark abyss, where I grew up amidst cruel slaughter from the day I was born, I've encountered even the most difficult situations. A mere transcendent is nothing. Nothing? Then how can we win? The sorcerer god looked at him. I'm currently paying a visit to His Majesty the Great Monarch, the great demon god said. Monarch? The sorcerer god was startled. Monarch represented an extremely lofty status. The dark abyss was composed of layers of worlds, and the highest leader of a world was the monarch. Monarchs had extremely high statuses and were extremely powerful. Most of them were stage 4 world deities, and some were even powerful existences. World deities were divided into 4 stages, and stage 4 world deities had already reached an unfathomable realm. They were extremely few in number, and had long since occupied their own territories. Some of them were not any weaker than powerful existences. Even the great demon god was merely a subordinate of an abyss monarch. My main body has already gone to pay a visit and is waiting to be summoned. The great demon god said, both of us have paid a great price in this war. If we lose, the price will be too great. I've fought for the monarch, and he trusts me greatly. I believe that it shouldn't be a problem for me to ask him for an idea. Yes, yes, yes. There's definitely hope. The sorcerer god immediately became expectant. An abyss monarch. What kind of existence was that? It was said that the monarch that the great demon god de Air House served was an ancient stage 4 world deity. Although he was not a powerful existence, the gap between them was extremely small. Those who could become stage 4 world deities had already touched the threshold of being a powerful existence. Some of them were not any weaker than powerful existences. The monarch is letting me in. The great demon god was also somewhat excited, there must be a way. It's up to you. The sorcerer god could no longer think of any effective methods. Although he was a lord of a material world, he was still a stage 1 world deity. Furthermore, he had cultivated for a relatively short period of time, and his foundation was much weaker than the great demon god's. The sorcerer god suddenly turned his head to look outside. Outside the castle. Dongbua Shuang stopped in midair, seemingly pondering for a moment. Finally, he brazenly brandished the spear in his hand. Hong, the spear suddenly expanded to a length of 500 kilometers. The spear's shaft streaked across the sky, and the illusory image of a huge black star slowly revolving around it appeared. With a world-destroying might, the spear lashed out furiously at the castle. Pang! A low rumble rang out, causing the entire castle to tremble violently. The sorcerer god's heart clenched. I don't believe that I can't blast it away. In midair outside, Dongbua Shuang was quite confident. Because the castle in the oceanic forest world had refined the transcendent world, it had become one with the entire world. Thus, no matter how it attacked, the attack would be able to be diverted to the entire Xia people's world. Thus, it was impossible to blast it away. However, the castle in front of him was unable to refine the entire world. No matter how sturdy it was. It was like kicking a ball. The ball might not be destroyed, but it could still be kicked away. Dongbua Shuiying's secret technique, chaotic suppression, was vast and mighty. Even if he couldn't destroy the castle, he could still directly blast it away. That would be considered a success. After all, the castle could be shifted, but a stable spatial passage could not be shifted. As long as a stable spatial passage was exposed, he would be able to destroy it. Break for me. Dongbua Shuang wantonly displayed his spear techniques. Every single move was filled with crushing power. Pang 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 pang. Heavy sounds of lashing against the castle could be heard. It was as though the lashes were striking the hearts of the sorcerer god and the great demon god. Both of them were extremely anxious. Star. Chapter 383. The 5,000-kilometer Black Fortress trembled again and again. Sorcerer God, the first spatial pillar's spirit array has shattered, a demigod inside the fortress immediately shouted anxiously. Quick, fix it. The sorcerer god's voice sounded. Fix it at all costs. Hold on. Yes. Inside the fortress, the sorcerer god and the great demon god both revealed anxious looks. Once all the spatial pillars' spirit arrays shatter, the entire fortress will be sent flying by Dongbua Shuiying's spear. The sorcerer god said in a low voice. The defensive spirit arrays outside the fortress can't withstand it? The great demon god asked anxiously. Sorcerer god, you personally built this fortress. Spirit arrays rely on deity crystals to activate them. How profound do you think they can be? The sorcerer god shook his head. Spirit arrays that are too powerful can't even be activated with deity crystals. Dongbua Shuiying's spear art has already reached an extremely profound level. It seems brutal, but in reality, it's directly aimed at the chaos hole. The fortress's defensive spirit arrays can only dissipate 30% of the force. How long can it last? The great demon god asked. I prepared a total of 3,000 spatial pillars, just in case, the sorcerer god said. My subordinates can also send treasures through the spatial passageway. It should be able to last for a month or two. The great demon god could not help but grit his teeth in anger. The flames on his body surged. Great demon god, it's all up to you now. The great abyss monarch can point us in the right direction, the sorcerer god said. The great demon god nodded. Shuang, who was hovering in midair outside the fortress, felt slightly anxious. He looked at the array inscriptions appearing on the surface of the fortress in front of him. Every time his spear struck the fortress, the array would light up, causing the entire fortress to become faintly discernible. Clearly, much of the force had been dissipated. Fortunately, the chaotic hole suppression's secret technique's profound laws were powerful enough that the spirit arrays could only dissipate a small portion of the force. If it were some stupid attack, it would probably be very difficult for it to have any effect. Bang bang bang. The spear raged in the air, striking the outer wall of the black fortress over and over again. Dongbua Shuang kept changing his position, striking the top of the fortress or other parts of the outer wall, trying to find the weakness of the fortress. I've been attacking for almost an hour now. This fortress has been trembling non-stop. Why can't I break through it? Dongbua Shuang could also feel the burden of the blood drinker spear on his soul. Although his soul was strong, he had yet to condense a true deity heart. When he activated the blood drinker spear, this blood-refined divine weapon that had reached the top grade of the divine level still brought him a great deal of pressure. Let's take a rest first. Dongbua Shuang temporarily stopped his attacks. Let's try the method second senior brother came up with to destroy the fortress. His barbaric attacks. He had discussed it with Senior Gubai and Senior Feiyun, and it should be effective. However, this fortress should be connected to the space pillars, and there might be a lot of them. Even if he destroyed 3 to 5 of them, the sorcerer god could constantly replenish them. This was a process of consumption, and it depended on how well prepared the sorcerer god was. Furthermore, he was afraid that this fortress would be too stable. If it was too stable, he wouldn't be able to break through it. Thus, Senior Gubai, a world deity who specialized in forging, personally came up with a method to destroy the fortress for Dongbua Shuang. Come. Dongbua Shuang looked at the star pagoda in the distance. So. A total of 15 unique shuttle-shaped deity world battleships flew out. Chao Qing, Si Kong Yang, Qiu Qi Bai, Yuan Qing, City Lady Bu, Chun Yuan, Gong Yu, Grand Elder Palace Head, Zhang Nua, and a few others. Each of them rode on a god armor battleship and flew out. The inside of the battleship was also powered by deity crystals. Thus, they could easily control it. This time, it concerned the survival of the Xia people. Even the Bloodshed Tavern and the Temple of the Earth God had sent a total of 5 demigods. However, the degree of trust between them was different. Dongbua Shuang had prepared a total of 15 special deity world battleships. Naturally, he would let the Infernal Palace demigods control them first. In order to prevent spies from infiltrating, every member of the Xia clan had to act independently, preventing them from harming others. Deity World Battleship? The Sorcerer God and the Great Demon God frowned. The higher one's realm, the less reliance they had on war weapons. In the deity world, even the Sorcerer God could easily kill countless people. If his true body was present, those battleships would be nothing more than toys to him. He could easily kill the pilots inside. Even using a large number of war weapons to kill a Stage 1 world deity was not an easy task. Usually, only a deity army could do so with the help of special war weapons. These aren't standard battleships. They should be specially refined. The sorcerer god frowned. My subordinates hidden within the Xia people told me that this is the method the Xia people use to break through the fortress, the great demon god said. Specially refined battleships for breaking through the fortress? The sorcerer god grew even more anxious. The situation was truly unfavorable for him. The 15 shuttle-shaped deity world battleships soon flew to the front of the fortress and spread out. Xiao! The shuttle-shaped battleship controlled by Chao Qing was the first to move. On the surface of the battleship, a peculiar whirlpool-like three-dimensional array appeared. With a boom, this three-dimensional array turned into a peculiar black millstone. This black millstone emitted a boundless aura of destruction, as though everything in the world would be crushed by this millstone. It slowly flew out, leaned against the outer wall of the fortress, and began to rotate at an extremely slow speed. A terrifying might was constantly being transmitted. Following which, the other 14 battleships also began to attack. They were all using the same method. Numerous terrifying black millstones leaned against the outer wall of the fortress. Furthermore, all 15 of these black millstones were very close to each other and were rotating slowly. A terrifying force was constantly being transmitted, crushing the entire fortress. Dongbua Shuang watched from afar and revealed a smile. This was the most targeted method to break through the fortress that second senior brother had refined. Because it was powered by deity crystals, the power of the array was limited. This array was created based on the Grade 2 deity heart, the Millstone deity heart. Although it seemed slow, its power was limitless. Each of them had the power of a peak deity. In terms of breaking through the fortress, it was even more effective than his own secret technique. All 15 of them simultaneously executed it. Pang, pang, pang. One by one, the spatial pillar arrays began to explode. 3 pillars, no, 6 pillars, no, 9 pillars. Sorcerer God, the spatial pillar arrays are breaking one after another. The sorcerer god was extremely anxious. At this rate, the fortress would not be able to withstand the attacks in less than 10 minutes. The fortress would definitely be blasted away. You and I both have subordinates among the transcendents of the Xia people. The great demon god said. The Xia people are very cautious. We separated them completely, so that they wouldn't have a chance to destroy the fortress. We can't care about that now. Amen. Although the demonic beasts under my command entered rather late, there is a rather talented one called Yuan Qing who has also become a demigod. Originally, I wanted to hide him for a critical moment, but I haven't been able to find an opportunity. Forget it, we can't care about that now. The sorcerer god said. Let them do it. The great demon god nodded. Although the great demon god's doppelganger was giving the order, in the distant dark abyss, in one of the layers of the abyss, there was a magnificent and beautiful golden palace. The countless palaces occupied an area of millions of kilometers, and everywhere was golden, emitting a dazzling light. This was the most dazzling place. It was even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. On the peak of a mountain within the palace complex, a golden armored figure was standing there, gazing at the boundless world. Behind him was the great demonic god, De Erhao, dressed in black armor. Your Majesty. De Erhao said respectfully, this is the current situation. I humbly request Your Majesty to point us in the right direction. In the mortal world, the power you can display is too weak. You can't threaten this little doll called Dongbu Shuang. The golden-armored sovereign continued gazing into the distance, saying calmly, unless we can invite an equally peerless transcendent to directly defeat Dongbu Shuang. However, he took the initiative to establish the Star Pagoda. With the assistance of the Star Pagoda, finding a transcendent who can defeat him will be very difficult. Apart from this, the best method is to trap him. The golden-armored sovereign's voice was still calm. Your Majesty, how do we trap him? The great demon god, De Erhao, said, in the mortal world, even if we use a battleship or a spatial deity treasure to temporarily trap him, we won't be able to stabilize the battleship if he attacks from the inside. The impact will also send the spatial deity treasure flying in one direction, or even into the Star Pagoda. Furthermore, with the help of the blood-creeping flower, we can send the spatial deity treasure into Crimson Rock Mountain. There are world deities in Crimson Rock Mountain who can easily help him escape. Of course there are ways to trap him, but the price is not small, the golden-armored sovereign said. To him, this was a small matter. If not for De Erhao being his loyal subordinate, he wouldn't have bothered to get involved. Chapter 384. In the vast desert, the 15 shuttle-shaped ships posed a huge threat to the towering fortress that covered half the world. Do it! Do it! Within the 15 shuttle-shaped ships, 2 of them received the news through their secret communication treasures. After lying low for so long, you finally let me make my move? A skinny old man had a ferocious look on his face. He was not a member of the 6 major transcendent organizations. Instead, he was the leader of a small transcendent organization overseas. His name was Pei Shan, and he kept a low profile. The Xia people trusted these demigods, at least more than the demigods from the Bloodshed Tavern and the Temple of the Earth God. Although this is a betrayal of the entire Xia people, I am truly sorry. The mighty great demon god will help me reconstruct my fleshly body so that I can continue living. For the sake of my seemingly eternal life, Xia people, if I die, then so be it. The skinny old man Pei Shan's eyes were filled with coldness. Within another shuttle-shaped ship. Xia people. Yuan Qing's youthful face was filled with disappointment. Senior Snow Eagle, Senior Jing Qiu, Big Brother Eternal Wind, Senior Pu Yang. One by one, he saw familiar faces. For the past 200 years, he had spent most of his life amongst humans. Dongbo Shuaying and the rest had treated him like their own brothers. I am sorry. Yuan Qing closed his eyes. He would never forget the scenes of his youth. Mother, why aren't you moving? Are you asleep? Leave quickly, she has been killed by the humans. A male wolf bit a wolf cub and fled. Father. The half-grown wolf cub watched as a group of Xia people slaughtered the male wolf and carried it on their shoulders. Yuan Qing howled in pain. Boom! The shuttle-shaped flying shuttle abruptly changed its direction and once again sent out a large black millstone. This time, it smashed into another shuttle-shaped flying shuttle that was not far away from them. The impact from the power at the pinnacle of the divine level immediately sent this shuttle-shaped flying shuttle flying sideways, and it even collided into another shuttle-shaped flying shuttle that was not far away. A total of 2 shuttle-shaped ships simultaneously attacked their own ship without distinguishing between friend and foe. Pei Shan. Yuan Qing. The Xia people in the other 13 warships were all stunned. In the distance, Dongbo Shuang, who was resting with a blood drinker spear in his hand, was also shocked. He had guessed that there would be a traitor, but he did not expect that it would be Yuan Qing. There weren't many transcendents that he was close to. Towards this shy transcendent who was younger than him, Dongbo Shuang was very concerned and took care of him as though he was his own younger brother. How could it be him? Dongbo Shuang could not believe his eyes. Pei Shan, how dare you betray the Xia people? How could you? Chao Qing's angry roar resounded in the air. Old bro Chao Qing, you're lucky. You became a deity, but what about me? I am not far from the end of my lifespan. If I die, what does the life and death of the Xia people have to do with me? Pei Shan did not feel guilty at all as he shouted arrogantly. Qiu Qibai's voice resounded through the air, and it was filled with grief and indignation. Could it be that you live for the sake of living? Have you forgotten how you grew up from a mortal to where you are today? If it wasn't for the Xia people, how could there be you? Could it be that you are willing to reincarnate into the dark abyss and sacrifice the lives of the Xia people? Qiu Qibai, I am not you. You are a genius transcendent. What am I? Pei Shan's cold voice resounded through the air. From the start till the end. Yuan Qing did not make a sound. He remained silent. What's going on? Yuan Qing and Pei Shan were shocked. They suddenly discovered that they were unable to control the battleships. The two of you don't have to worry. The battleships must have some tricks up their sleeves. Traitors will not be able to control the battleships. The two of them received the message. However, without a pilot, these 2 battleships will not be able to contain any god crystals. They are of no threat at all. Hua! The space around them turned blurry and chaotic. A golden-robed figure walked out from the chaos. He stretched out both his hands, and they were like 2 heavenly screens as he grabbed hold of the 2 battleships. If it was an ordinary battleship, it would be extremely powerful with god crystals. How could a mere demigod clone of the sorcerer god be able to grab hold of it? However, these 2 battleships no longer had any energy supply and were easily captured. Swoosh! The golden-robed sorcerer god flew forward. Although he seemed to be moving slowly, the blurred space shortened the distance between them. He directly entered one of the castles. Sorcerer god, die! Dongbo Shuang was enraged. He suddenly transformed into a stream of light and rushed over. At the same time, he brandished the blood drinker spear in his hand. The blood drinker spear was thousands of kilometers long. The spear shaft contained boundless power as it ruthlessly struck the castle ship, causing a loud bang. Outside the castle ship, there were arrays revolving. The entire castle ship was hexagonal, and the 6 corners were the 6 castles that supported the main castle ship. Inside the castle ship. The two battleships were captured and placed on the ground. Even if these battleships have some tricks up their sleeves, I can easily destroy them. Don't worry, the two of you. The golden-robed sorcerer god's figure flashed and he entered the battleship that Yuan Qing was on. After all, the battleship did not have any god crystals to power it, so it could not stop the sorcerer god from entering. Hua, suddenly. The doors of the two battleships opened at the same time. What? The golden-robed sorcerer god was shocked. Now that Yuan Qing was unable to control it and he had not started refining it, did that mean that the battleship had opened on its own? Not good. The golden-robed sorcerer god did not care about anything else and immediately grabbed Yuan Qing. Boom! A terrifying explosion erupted from within the battleship. Its power far exceeded that of an ordinary peak deity. Strictly speaking, it was at the peak of the deity realm. What was the peak of the deity realm? According to the cultivation realms, the deity realm was divided into early stage, middle stage, late stage, and peak stage. However, if one cultivated a very powerful world deity-ranked secret technique, or created a very terrifying secret skill, or if one used a world deity weapon, its power would generally far exceed that of an ordinary peak deity. Hence, the term peak of the deity realm came to be. Damn! The golden-robed sorcerer god grabbed Yuan Qing. Their surroundings became chaotic and blurry. Although terrifying explosions were happening all around them, they could not touch them at all. One must know that even Dongbu Shui Ying's attack could not touch the golden-robed sorcerer god at all. Needless to say, this lightning god blaze. This explosion was the lightning god blaze that Dongbu Shuiying had prepared beforehand. Each of the 15 shuttle-shaped battleships contained one lightning god blaze, and each one cost 10,000 deity crystals. However, its power was much stronger than his own attack, reaching the peak of the deity realm. It was just that, this kind of explosion was purely powerful. Its laws of profound mysteries were negligible. Hence, the golden-robed sorcerer god could easily dodge it. Pei Shan, who was in another battleship, let out a roar of despair before instantly disintegrating into nothingness. Even if the great demon god knew what had happened here, he would not be able to retrieve his soul in time. This kind of peak deity attack was too terrifying. Pei Shan's soul was completely destroyed in an instant, leaving nothing behind. Hong Long Long, the golden-robed sorcerer god's realm was high, but the surrounding buildings were dead. Under this terrifying attack, they began to collapse. Under this terrifying explosion, in midair outside the fortress, Dongbu Shuiying watched coldly. He had already prepared himself for the betrayal of the traitor. He would make use of this opportunity to deal the enemy a fatal blow. The fortress was protected by defensive spirit designs, and was hard enough to destroy. However, there were no spirit designs on the inside, and it was much weaker. Two limitless annihilation-grade lightning god blaze were enough to produce a miraculous effect. As for Yuan Qing and Pei Shan, who might die because of this. Although Dongbu Shuiying had some feelings for Yuan Qing, since Yuan Qing had betrayed the Xia people, Dongbu Shuiying would not show any mercy. Instantly, a corner of the six-pointed star-shaped fortress was smashed. Dongbu Shuiying saw it with a single glance. At the end of the destroyed fortress, the outer walls of the main fortress were still intact, and there were spirit designs circulating. How crafty! Dongbu Shuiying shook his head. However, he has destroyed one fortress. 6 fortresses are unable to form a perfect defense, and it will be much easier for me to break through. Damn it, damn it! The golden-robed sorcerer god grabbed Yuan Qing with one hand, looking at the scene in front of him angrily. The 6 fortresses were auxiliary to the main fortress. They helped to disperse the impact. Now that one of them was destroyed, the main fortress's ability to disperse the impact was greatly reduced. Yuan Qing. In the distant sky, Dongbu Shuiying looked at Yuan Qing, who was in the golden-robed sorcerer god's grasp. Why did you betray the Xia people? Why? Betray? Yuan Qing looked at Dongbu Shuiying. This is not betrayal. If you want to blame someone, blame it on me being a demonic beast, and you being a human. Demonic beast? Dongbua Shuang was stunned. Yuan Qing was a demonic beast. My parents died in the hands of you humans. Yuan Qing looked at Dongbua Shuang. Dongbua Shuang fell silent. Yuan Qing continued, although I feel sorry for you, I have never regretted or hesitated. Previously, when the mighty sorcerer god set up a trap to kill you, you were only lucky to survive because you were poisoned. That ambush. I was the one who leaked the information, and asked them to surround and kill you. For the sake of the demonic beast race, I do not regret it at all. It is just that I have let you down. Dongbua Shuang fell silent. His previous hatred had mostly dissipated. Both sides had their own races, and it was hard to say who was right and who was wrong. Humph, Dongbua Shuang, just you wait and see. The golden-robed sorcerer god gritted his teeth. Grabbing Yuan Qing, his figure suddenly blurred, and with a whoosh, he drilled into the wall of the main fortress and disappeared. Inside the main fortress, the golden-robed sorcerer god casually tossed Yuan Qing aside and instructed, "Go to my world and cultivate well." As for Yuan Qing, the golden-robed sorcerer god felt that the demonic beast race was worth nurturing. After all, compared to humans, the demonic beast race was weaker in terms of comprehension. Yuan Qing could be ranked at the top of the Xia people in terms of comprehension, and was an extremely rare peerless genius among the demonic beasts. The sorcerer god cherished talents. After all, Yuan Qing would be his subordinates in the future. Yes, sorcerer god, Yuan Qing said respectfully. He immediately turned and left. He could no longer participate in this battle, and soon left the world of the Xia people through the spatial tunnel. Hua! The sorcerer god went to a hall in the main fortress, where the great demon god was. How is it? The sorcerer god looked at the great demon god. I have a way to deal with Dongbua Shuang. It will definitely succeed, but the price will be high, the great demon god said. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.